Maybe. We're good? Okay. We're live. So thank you. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our December 5th, 2022 regular business meeting. We appreciate everybody being in attendance here tonight. If you have an agenda in front of you, you will see that item number 1 deals with our strategies. Item number 2 is the link where our live YouTube feed can be found. Item number 3 is our Truth in Taxation meeting. So I just want to touch on that briefly. At 6 o'clock tonight, we will pause our regular board meeting and we will move into our Truth in Taxation meeting that will likely take 45 minutes to an hour, something in that time frame. If we have something going on that will take longer than, say, 5 minutes or something, we may have a 5-minute recess before 6 o'clock. Just know that. So with that said, item number 4 is our call to order. And we have Mr. Bellingham here with us tonight acting as our clerk, as Ms. Steves cannot be with us. So with that, Mr. Bellingham, will you please determine if we have a quorum present?
Mr. Chair, we do have a quorum present.
Thank you for that. I would ask everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance if you're able to.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Bellingham, thank you for leading us in the pledge.
Welcome.
So this brings us to item number 5, the approval of the agenda. And I would entertain the approval of the agenda with a little bit of flexibility once again for that Truth in Taxation piece at 6 o'clock.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, give it to Leanne.
We have a motion by Mr. Robichaud and a second by Ms. Lechtenberg. Any further discussion on the approval of the agenda? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. This brings us to item number 5, recognition, awards, and presentations. So 5A is our student board representative report. So Ms. Jillian Huberty.
Hi, so I am our student representative, and I just wanted to share some celebrations that are going to be coming up. So next week, we have our Student Summit, which is where we meet with 4 schools, TCU, WEM, Faribault, and Northfield. And we're going to go over data, like ACT prep, and then just cultural data. So we're all going to be communicating and learning how do we improve our schools and just talking and sharing information. Then we will be reporting that data back to our district youth council meeting the following day on Friday. We're also going to have Mr. Olson, the Faribault High School principal, and Cora, the ALC coordinator, come sit in on one of our district youth council meetings just so that we have someone who is up in higher power really get a feel for what is all going to be happening. Now here's my other half, Sophia, but that's just what's going on. And so we're excited to go meet with all these other schools and talk about our data.
Thank you. Sophia, do you have anything you'd like to add? Or? Sorry to put you on the spot, but
I'm sure she did great and covered everything.
that conclude your remarks?
Yeah.
Board members, any comments or questions for our student reps? Thank you. We appreciate it and look forward to hearing more. Okay. Ms. Zaverill, do we know if there's a lot of people in the hallway that everybody knows out there's overflow rooms and stuff?
There's people out there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item, I might have said 5 before, but this is item 6. 6B, high school presentation, Mr. Joel Olson and Mr. Corey Little. Welcome, gentlemen. Wonderful. Whatever you're comfortable with. We have one. We have one. But I'll take 2 if you want.
Good evening, and thank you for letting us come today and present on some of the fun and innovative things we're doing at the high school. The first part of this presentation will be Corey speaking to the majority of the slides that you'll see up there, and then I'm going to close it off with some of the other things we're doing at the high school level. So I'll let Corey kind of take over.
All right, so I'm Corey Little. I'm the industrial arts teacher at the high school. I took over last year the industrial arts program. A couple of the cool things that we have going on is we were able to offer engineering design this school year. So with that, the picture on the left is a 3D printer that we've got from St. Cloud State University. It's part of a tech network that we're part of. So our engineering design kids hand drew projects, or hand drew cubes, 3x3 cubes. We use 3/4 inch wood blocks, and then they use Fusion 360 to 3D model those and assemble them. On the left over there, that tiny little cube, they broke it down into 3x3 centimeter cubes, so they had to scale everything down, and then we 3D printed it using the tech network. They're currently working on passive amplifiers for their cell phone. So what they're doing now is they took measurements off their cell phone. They're gonna either build it out of wood or 3D print it, or use the laser engraver that we got through a grant that I'll talk about coming up. So this is a universal laser that we were able to purchase through a grant from the Chamber of Commerce. We had a meeting this summer to talk about a pathway that we're doing with South Central College, where we're teaching Introduction to Manufacturing. And in that conversation, we found out the Chamber had a grant that they were looking to enhance programming with. So we talked about it, and we were able to get this universal laser printer, and we're able to use it to prototype different things. So our engineering design class uses it to prototype their models first. It saves on material. We can cut out of cardboard, wood, and different types of materials like that. In the spring, our CAD class will also use it to do some prototyping and things for the different models and stuff that they're going to be making. The coaster that you guys have is laser engraved off of this machine. We went through and we turned the Falcon logo into a file that's printable on the laser, and then we just put the material in there, like the picture on the right, and it etches everything in, and then it actually cuts out of the 1/4 inch material. So you can cut, you can engrave, and you can do a bunch of different things with it. So it's a pretty robust machine that's going to allow the program to do some pretty cool things, prototyping and different projects that way. I also plan on using it in my woods class to do a little more personalization of projects. It's got a 32 by 18 inch bed in there, so it's pretty good sized. So like our tabletops for my 9th grade woods classes are 18 by 18 inches, so we'll be able to put those in there, and students will be able to do different types of engraving and things with that program. We were also able to upgrade our welding shop, and with this grant as well. And what we were able to buy are 5 Lincoln Power MIG welders. It's going to allow us to bring in more wire feed welding, stick welding, TIG welding, and then some pulse-on-pulse welding that they teach over at the college. So we worked with a welding instructor over at SEC, found a welder that will be a good fit for our students that are going over there to continue their education and get a welding diploma. So this is another, we ended up with 5 of these, and we're working on getting them set up and piped for gas and all of that stuff, so we can do the wire feed and everything like that. But we're also able to get that. This is some of the projects that my Cabinet 1 class are doing. So Cabinet 1, they design their projects and they build everything from the plans that they create. Some students find some ideas online and they modify them and make it what they want, but we've got different projects happening, from coffee tables to hutches to bed frames to fishing rod racks, all different types of things that are happening in there. Another upgrade that we got, so in that same conversation that we got the welders and the laser engraver from, we also were able to get Techno CNC router donated from South Central College. It's a 4x8 bed, so I can throw a 4x8 foot piece of plywood up on there, or a piece of wood, and we can do different projects and stuff getting cut out on the CNC machine as well. So Wood Technology 2 in the spring, we're gonna plan out the sides in Fusion 360. It's a 3D CAD software, and then we're going to program the machine to cut the dados and cut the pieces out and assemble it that way. Most of the cabinet shops that are operating around the area and in towns are going to CNCs. A lot of our manufacturing have some sort of CNC machine, whether it's a milling machine or they're doing metal work. So these types of skills are very valuable in our community, and it's a great addition that we're lucky to have South Central donate. I can't get the videos to work. On the right there, we also were able to get some Shaper Origins. What this is a handheld CNC machine. So same type of design process, building the files, making your project, and then this one's hand-driven. So you're not going to do as big a projects as you would on the Techno CNC, but you can cut smaller parts out and work with tolerances and constraints and everything like that. Casey, it doesn't want to work. Oh, there we go. So, any questions on that?
Board members, questions, comments? I just want to tell you, way cool, and thank you to the chamber for partnering with the school district and however that looks, but what a tremendous hands-on opportunity for our students. So.
Yeah. So we're very excited. There's good things happening in the program, and we're moving it forward, and we've got a lot of nice new things that we can incorporate, and I look forward to seeing where it goes.
Excellent.
And then quickly, I don't know if the slide is still up there, but one of the things we're doing that we got selected this year was a pilot program for the direct admissions program through the Office of Higher Ed. And so because of our school and our demographics, the direct admissions program is something where every student has the opportunity to go to college. And what we do is take the GPAs of all of our seniors this year, and based on those GPAs, there's different levels of schools that will admit them automatically without having to go through the process that normally you would have to go through. So we've been able to identify all of our seniors this year. There's about 5 different levels of schools based on GPAs that those kids can go to. And yeah, you can see it right there. So it offers graduating seniors college options to the state and eliminate the application fee. 40 high school students, or 40 high schools, and we were one of those schools to be selected for that. Reduces our equity gaps by providing information directly to students and eliminating the need to navigate an often complicated system. So basically the kids get a letter from the Office of Higher Ed that says you are eligible to be admitted to these different schools, and it is more of a proactive approach than having kids having to try to find out what schools they could go to. And that is it. So we're excited about that and continuing to work to help our students as they navigate this high school experience.
Thank you. Thank you. Board members, questions or comments for Mr. Olson or Mr. Little? No, wonderful. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Excellent.
Okay, that brings us to item 6C, Jefferson highlights, Mr. Jurens and Mr. Scott Morrissey, and you have about 17 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you. All right, so we're here to present on some.
Can I interrupt you one second? If everybody didn't mind taking about 10 seconds to just make sure their cell phones are muted, it would be wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate it. Sorry.
So we're here to highlight some of the great things that are going on at Jefferson so far this year. And we just wanted to start off with this slide. A lot of us, when we think about schools, we think that schools are there for academics only. However, we know that having the academic skills, the conditions for the academic skills to be learned, that our students need to have a strong skill set around social emotional learning as well as behavioral learning. And so I put that equation there. We talk a lot about how having strong social emotional and then behavior skills, the product of that is the conditions for learning academics. So we're going to highlight some of the things that we're doing academically, behaviorally, and socially emotionally this year. We are going to focus primarily on the behavior piece. This is directly from the report that Mr. Morrissey and I used to guide us this summer as we started at Jefferson. This is a report done by the Regional Centers of Excellence as Jefferson was transitioning to new leadership. And so we're going to focus on number one, reestablishing the behavior management system. If there's anybody on the board that would like to learn more about 2 and 3, feel free to reach out, set up a meeting with us, or come to Jefferson and experience it for yourself. So starting with the academic piece, our site team set some goals. I would like to highlight that we set goals set on growth. So we are looking to increase the amount of students that are showing growth in literacy, approximately 10%. So we're looking to increase the students that are showing typical or aggressive growth on our Fast Bridge assessment, the number of students, approximately 10%. We have been doing some work academically in our professional learning communities on our Tier 1 instruction. We're really focusing on making sure that our PLC goals are tied directly to our site building goals. And then our teachers are also working on their growth and development plans, and they have been encouraged to weave in that growth goal into their teacher growth and development so that we can see how all of the goals we have are connected. Some of the Tier 1 strategies that we're using academically are really tied into our EBPs that go in with our CLOSE grant, our literacy coaches, family literacy specialists, as well as the AVID strategies that the district employs. I would like to give a huge shout out to Tracy Corcoran and Katie Rotvold for all the work they did to set up Win Time. Our Win Time model really focuses on targeting literacy instruction to what our students need most. As building principals, we facilitate monthly meetings with each grade level team, and we're really starting to see some positive growth and movement, not only of our students, but also with our staff in their learning as well. Let Scott talk about social emotional.
So in the area of social emotional, we use a curriculum called Second Step, and there's 4 different units that throughout the year that we talk about: skills for learning, empathy, emotional management, and problem solving. So 20 minutes per day of explicit instruction in those areas. Basically, my role, I help by sending out a calendar monthly that lays out the scope and sequence for the teachers so that they know exactly what to teach each day. It's pretty laid out for them. I do want to thank Kelsey, one of our social workers from Lincoln Elementary. She recently made our home links in Somali and Spanish so that now I can send those home, and I think that's a fantastic thing. Mr. Jurens and I would like to get in the classrooms, and he said, "Scott, you okay getting in there and teaching some lessons?" I said, "Let's do it." So once a week, him and I get into a different classroom for the 20 minutes. We either co-teach or teach the lesson. It's been really fun. As you can see by the pictures, there, Mrs. Cox's room, I went in there and she was teaching a lesson about asking for help, and we brought that to the lunchroom because I'm in the lunchroom most days, and I have to open about 97 cartons of milk and 125 packets of ketchup. And I said, so what she wants is ask 2 adults before you ask, or ask 2 kids before you ask an adult. So in the lunchroom, they're asking 2 kids for help to open their milk cartons now instead of Mr. Morrissey. I was spilling things. It was crazy. But that's the social emotional piece.
Okay, now on to the behavior. So at Jefferson, we say that with our PBIS program, we soar with Falcon Pride. That all begins with clear and consistent and predictable language that we use with students. On the right there, you see our Faribault Falcon Pledge, and the terms that we are clear and consistent and predictable about with all staff are being respectful, working hard, acting safe, and being responsible. We use those terms not only to redirect students that maybe are showing inappropriate behaviors, but we also use those terms to acknowledge behaviors. So if you look at the image in the lower left, those are SOAR tickets, and that's the currency we use to acknowledge students when we catch them showing Falcon Pride. I would like to give a shout out to Emily Tobin, our family literacy specialist. The right side of that SOAR ticket was recently added on to help with some family engagement, making a connection with families. So when I award a SOAR ticket now, I make sure I let the student know which trait I caught them showing. I always carry a pen on me, so I'll typically circle it. And I'll say, now make sure you get this cut off, take this home, and let your parents know Mr. Durance caught you showing Falcon Pride today.
So PBIS, so what is it? It's positive behavioral interventions and supports. We use consistent and predictable response to inappropriate behavior. I'm kind of become a data junkie, I guess, but here's one piece of data. Out of our 430 students at Jefferson, 379 of them, that's 88% of our population, have not received a behavior referral this school year. It's pretty fantastic. As far as a little bit about me, I didn't have any PBS experience necessarily. I knew what it was, even though I taught fourth grade at Divine Mercy, and I taught at a level 4 day treatment center, and I taught over 15 years as a special education teacher in emotional behavior disorder. That's kind of a new piece to me, to be in a school that has the PBS, and I tell you what, it's really a fantastic program. One of the hats that I wear as the Dean of Students is I am the coach, the PBIS coach. We have a really strong team of 11 different members that volunteer their time. We meet twice a month, and we get a lot of great work done there. As you can see by our flow chart on the right-hand side, I know it's small, but it's not necessarily for you to read perhaps, but for you to know that that's what guides teachers, so they know step by step what to do when a behavior does occur. Because we all know that as much teaching as you can do, there's still going to be a behavior that does happen. So that kind of helps us get through when it does. You're still up. Not so fast. One thing that Jefferson already had in place when we came was a really, really cool monthly Falcon Pride assemblies. And those are tied into our second step lessons. We also do lots of awards with those. Basically, each grade takes an assembly, and they teach that lesson. Last week, third grade did a lesson about empathy, and they did a fantastic job. And it really highlights the students of the month in Fayed Art, our STEAM 3 program. Also, we get a chance to recognize the Golden Tray Award, as you see Mr. Jim holding the golden tray up. That's for the cleanest lunch table and underneath, which I love because I'm usually the one that sweeps up the apples that are rolling around. And the golden broom is usually hogged by our 5th grade classroom. Mr. Schultz loves to get that award, and he keeps a really clean room. So that's a really cool thing at Jefferson, is those assemblies. But we do have one quick video to highlight our school song, and Mrs. Smith leads us here.
Pretty sure I did hear a suggestion from the audience that you should sing this.
I couldn't get out of my head.
I'm hard of hearing, but it did translate.
Ready to sing. We have so much to be proud of at Jefferson, don't we? As we sing our school song today, 2, 3, up. You're ready. Again, show your best thinking. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Here we go. Ready to sing? We have so much to be proud of at Jefferson.
All right, so our last slide here on behavior. On the left-hand side, you'll see what those of us in education know as a standard MTSS model. And in that MTSS model, we know that in all learning, this one's a slide that goes with behavior, but it's also academics and social emotional are also forms of learning, so this would apply to those areas as well. We know that 80% of our students are going to respond to Tier 1 universal instruction, so the instruction that all students receive. We know that about 15% of our students are going to need a little bit more support, maybe some specialized instruction to best meet their needs. An example academically would be some of the things that we're doing in that win time for literacy. And then about 5%, the red triangle at the top, really needs specialized, individualized support in order to learn and grow. Okay, this is a standard model that we all know about in education. Scott mentioned he's kind of become a data guru. If you look at the triangle on the right, that is our behavior data for the first 3 months of school at Jefferson. So right now, we have about 93% of our students falling in that Tier 1, about 5% falling in the Tier 2, and about 1.5% falling in the Tier 3. So the data would suggest that the program that Scott and I are using, and a lot of it too is Scott working with the staff members to build their skill set up as well, is working. So lastly, thank you for your time, and we'd be willing to welcome any questions or comments or feedback.
Thank you. Board members, any comments or questions for these two gentlemen? We have about 2.5 minutes before we need to move into our truth and taxation.
Just quickly, I should have said this when Corey and Joel were up here, but it was such a big deal that we had so much leadership turnover this year. And so I really, really enjoyed hearing from the four of you today and appreciate hearing such positive things from you, right? So thank you for all you've done and for making this transition with us. It's really nice to have you here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments or questions, board members? I would just like to say thank you. That triangle on the last page on the right, I think that's an impressive triangle. So I know the two of you are working really, really hard with all of your team there, and we appreciate all you do. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Gerdes, you can come on up and get prepared, and when my clock says 6, we'll get started with the truth and taxation. About 1.5 minutes or so.
Mr. Wolf, would you mind just explaining to the audience that the truth and taxation section of this meeting is something that's established well in advance, which is why we're having it now, even though we have a large group of people in the room?
Yeah, maybe I'll let Mr. Gerdes talk about that a little bit more than I do. But the truth and taxation, I believe, is required by law. We do it every year in December here. For whatever reason, the state says it needs to start at 6 o'clock, and so here we are at 6 o'clock doing this. So I apologize that we have other things on the agenda that people want to talk about or listen about and all that stuff, but we do have to do this here at 6 o'clock. So we're just following our state statute and our guidelines.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Mr. Gertis, we're almost there.
Let me know when.
All right, I'll let you know when.
The sooner we start, the sooner we end.
I hear you. There's 6 o'clock on my computer. We will now move back to item number 3 on our agenda, which is the Truth in Taxation meeting. So, Mr. Gertis, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Board. Thank you for allowing Chris and I to come before you this morning, this afternoon, this evening, whatever it is, to discuss the Truth in Taxation meeting, as Chad alluded to. This is a requirement that we have this meeting every year to receive the levy dollars that the district brings in. So as we kind of get going here, I'm going to let Chris talk a little bit about the first part. When we talk about the Truth in Taxation meeting, we'll talk briefly about the budget and a couple of things, but I'm going to turn it over to Chris and let him get started here, and then I'll take it from when he's done.
Thank you, Scott.
It's on the side.
Okay, I found it. Unlike Scott, I won't be going over to point because I'm too short. So the requirements of the Truth in Taxation meeting. One, discuss the the current budget, fiscal year 22-23. Discuss fiscal year 22 actual revenue and expenditures. Look forward to fiscal year 24, and discuss the 22 pay 23 property tax levy, and then allow the public to make comments. And this is this represents our general fund, which is just Fund 1, and as you'll see later, is the largest fund that we use. 69% comes from the state. That's actually down a little bit for reasons Scott will get into later. The next largest is federal at 15%, and that's decreasing due to not having ESSER money continue to come into the district. And then 14 is local property tax, and that's going up to offset the decreased state revenue. As I said, Scott will get into that more. And the last 2%, that's just little miscellaneous things, fees, donations, gifts, things like that come into the district. And this is the gap between what the state provides from the formula, the per pupil unit formula, since the state had allegedly declared that we were fully funded. So you see back in 2003, fully funded. Inflation is that top dashed line. The formula allowance is the dark blue line. And as of today, we have $1,263 per pupil unit. That's not exactly a student, but it's an approximation of a student. Or in total, $4.4 million annually. And here's the expenditure breakdown in the general fund. You'll see it stays fairly static year to year. The only real moving part there is that blue line, which is 2021, and that's COVID. So that's why that one's a bit different from everything else. There we go. Did I skip one?
I think you did.
I think I did. It took all the input at once. All right. The current year expenditures by fund. Like I said, the general fund is the largest fund we have. It is 82% of all expenses. The next runner-up is 4%. So Fund 1 really is the one to focus on. It's also the one that has the most discretion in spending. For those who don't know, all the other funds are very restricted as to what we can spend it on. And just a reminder, our fund balance policy, our unassigned general fund balance can't be any less than 9.5% of all general fund expenditures for the year. Our FY22 budget was just under 12%. The actual came in at just over 11.5%. And this year we our adopted had 11.3%. So still significantly above that 9.5 threshold. And there is our adopted budget for fiscal year 23. This is just a snapshot, a single point in time. Our best guess then, when we was approved in May?
June.
June. It's not where we're at today, but this is that snapshot. And at the time, we predicted deficit spending $968,000 in Fund 1, and then having Fund 2 go from its currently healthy balance to an even healthier balance, going up just under $12,000 by the end of the year. And then here's the remainder of the funds: community ed deficit spending $40,000, and the rest, not as looked at as hard. And last year's actuals, you can see the general restricted went down from 3 million to 1.7. The unrestricted increased from just under 7.3 to just under 8.7. And then food service, as you mentioned, it was a significant increase from 626 to 1.6 million. And Scott, do you want this or do you want me to click it for you?
Oh, yeah, you can drive if you want, since it's not working. So first, I want to apologize to Chad and John and Courtney, who have to listen to this conversation twice in the course of a single day.
We'll just understand extra well.
I do promise that Chris and I do get a little bit better each time, so hopefully it'll be better than the first go-around this morning. So what we have on the screen right now is just one slide as it relates to fiscal year 24. So at this point in time, Chris and I are kind of living in 3 fiscal years. We're just wrapping up officially fiscal year 22. We're budgeting and working through fiscal year 23, and we're already thinking about fiscal year 24 with this Truth in Taxation meeting. So just to talk a little bit about what's on the screen. This does not replace the revised budget that Chris and I will be sitting in front of you again in January to present to you. But what it does is gives you kind of a look as to kind of where we are, the state of the state as of right now. So the Excel little snapshot there that's in that document is the one that we've talked about for several months now when we decided to go for the referendums and the tech levies that we attempted to do here in November. And you can see that for fiscal year 24, which is the second column over, in order to maintain that 9.5% that Chris was talking about a second ago, we need to cut $1.775 million out of the budget for fiscal year 24. So just around the corner, we'll start that process. Now, if you look over to the right side of that, all right, here's some things that will be reflected in the budget that Chris and I bring to you again in January, but that we know today. Okay, we know today that we finished in the unrestricted 422 fund balance about $240,000 better than what we budgeted last year, or about 0.3% better than what we did last year. So that money gets kind of kicked forward, right, and helps offset subsequent deficits. We heard Casey talk last board meeting about just over $300,000 that he brought in through some ECFE funding, right, from the federal government around technology. So again, help out the budget for this year and obviously help us out for next year as well, right, as we kick the can forward. And then you've heard me talk about at the last board meetings, and you'll hear it again here later on tonight, around that we're ahead of budget for ADM, right? So conservatively, we put about another $250,000 into the budget for that. On the downside, we've had some conversations that there might be a new Somali charter school starting. You know, rough numbers, 50 children might leave our district. The proverbial $8,000 ahead, 50 times $8,000, $400,000. So if you look at that slide, all total, that is $390,000 to the good. If you net that against the $1.775 million that we need to cut, we're looking at estimated general fund cuts of $1.385 million for fiscal year 24. And that does not include any other cuts, specifically around the Esser Cliff, that we all know, as Chris alluded to, is coming here into the very near future as well. So I'm going to stop there. Any questions on that? Chad's looking like he's pointing at me, so I'm going to
Yeah,
hold there.
I'll open up questions and comments to board members. Do you have any questions, Mr. Olson?
Yeah, as a delegate to the MSBA, they're bringing up a resolution which kind of in the background, since the Democrats control the House, Senate, and the governorship, they're going to put forth to fully fund schools. It's simple as that, because that's what they're going to try to lobby the legislators up there that to fully fund schools. So that's what they're going to, so that's what they passed with the delegates.
Thank you for that update. I'll
Yep.
cross all our fingers and our toes too, right?
Yeah, and other stuff I'll mention later, but since you mentioned it, that another resolution is any mandates to be fully funded. And if there are mandates that are not funded, either fund them or get rid of them. So that's another resolution that was passed at the assembly, so.
Well, that fixes a lot of issues if that all comes to fruition,
Yeah,
right?
that's, there's no promises, but.
Write that down, that Richard said that tonight.
Yeah. Yeah.
About 6:10.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Board members, any other questions or comments regarding what we've seen so far? Mr. Gertis, I do have one question for you. Just on the bottom of that screen that was there, when you net the things out, the 1.775 versus the additional funds, at the bottom of the page it said estimated budget cuts needed to maintain fund balance would be about just under 1.4 million. So just for this audience to hear and understand, Mr. Gertis, if nothing changes at the state to what Mr. Olson just said, hopefully, that would mean a reduction of approximately 15 to 18 full-time staff members in our district. Is that correct?
That is accurate.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make the public overly aware of what that means. So thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Chris. So this is just a picture. A couple board meetings ago, we talked about truth in taxation flyer that the state wants us to mail out. This is a copy of what this has looked like. This is now completed. It is published. If anybody would want a copy, please let me know. We have been sending this out to a few people that have requested as per the T&T document that was actually went out in people's mail. So as we get into the meat and potatoes now of the presentation, you guys, board in front of you have some flyers. I believe there's some copies out in the general public as well. It's a flyer that looks like this, small numbers and lots of them, right? That's what accountants do, right? We make them small so nobody can read them. I never know if we're right or wrong. I'm going to be referencing some of these numbers on this sheet throughout the presentation, so if you can keep that handy. But I really want to start at the top so everybody's got a frame of mind of what we're talking about. So obviously we're in calendar year 2022, and we are going through the levy for payable 23. So I want to be real clear. What payable 23 means is that this is when the general public or businesses pay their taxes, right, in May and usually in October or November, right, unless you're a farmer, in which case it's April and November or October or something. They have different time frames. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. That's for tax payments in 23, calendar year 2023. This revenue that we're talking about today affects our fiscal year 24 financial statements. Fiscal year 24, so not this calendar year or fiscal year, but next fiscal year starting July 1st. Okay, so just so everybody's clear on that. So we'll be going through some of these things throughout the slide deck. What we have in front of us that I wanted to bring to everybody's attention and just talk about briefly is kind of the property tax life cycle. Okay, so back in July of this year, the state started the process for this levy cycle that we're in. And it starts with us pulling a bunch of data and submitting it to the state, and then They work through all of that data and put it into a publication, which we'll talk about in a second. But all of the assessed values for the homes and the properties and the businesses and the land that went into that process were assessed values that were actually posted about November of 21, right? And you all get your property tax statements in the mail. Some of you maybe have gotten yours already for fiscal year 23, payable 23, calendar year 23. And so those assessed values actually started being assessed in 2020, October of 2020. So as you can see here, there's a long lag time in some of these numbers that are going into these charts and graphs that I'm going to show you. So keep that in mind that what you see here might be only part of what will be the new norm for the next couple of years, okay? So just keep that in mind. So that's kind of how the assessors do it. The legislatures, they set up all the different net tax capacity formulas, right? So if you read the little box there, you can see a house valued at less than $500,000 gets assessed at 1%. If your house is more than $500,000, it gets assessed at a higher percent. And there's about 70 to 80 different lines, and I'm not about to go into all of them with you, of all these different calculations, but those are all set by the state legislature. Okay? Then the county auditor obviously goes through and works out all those numbers, right? And you've seen some of those numbers that Jamie presented at the levy and that I've talked about here in front of you all over time. Okay? We move down, then again, back to the legislatures outside of our control is they set all the formulas, some of which we're going to talk about tonight. We move down, the Department of Education creates this book. It's about 40, 45 pages. I don't know, every year it seems to get a few more, that we sort through to try and figure out this mess that we're going to present to you tonight, okay? And then you as the board have step 6 in this process, which is why we're here tonight, is to approve this document and accept the realities of all the work that the legislature and the Department of Ed have done and the assessors have done before you. And then again, the county finals it up and actually sends you out tax statements that will come out early next year. Okay? Any questions on that? All right? So as we move forward into the next slide, there's really 3 parts to what we're going to talk about today. The general fund, as Chris talked about earlier, that makes up a majority of what our revenue is. Some community service funds and our debt service funds. All right? We're going to talk about each one of those individually. Moving on to the next page, this is a summary. It's actually 2 pages here. 2-page summary, so you can actually read it, of year-over-year property tax numbers based on a couple different groupings. And we're briefly going to go through those groupings, and then we'll dig into each one of those so that you can kind of understand what's in each one of those. The first one being our operating referendum. Again, as you heard through the process earlier this year, that's based on the RMV, referendum market value. And you can see that our operating referendum went from 2.7 to 3.2. Now you might ask, that's a pretty big increase, right? And we've talked about this before, is that there's really 2 reasons for this. One is inflation on our operating referendum. And the inflation has gone up in 22, it has gone up in 23, and right now it will go up again in 24. The adjustments, so again, you see a pretty big number there in terms of adjustments. Well, why is that? As I just mentioned, we're talking about fiscal year 24. The state is coming back through and truing up things for fiscal year 22 and for calendar year 23. That was last year's levy, and giving us the difference in this adjustment of 468. So you can see this is a big chunk of an increase is based on our operating referendum. The other piece that goes into this that we're going to talk about, I'm going to actually give you a real live example on, is the levy to aid equalization. And I'm going to save that for later because I want you guys to understand that. We're going to dig into that a little later. All right, we move down to the next section of this, and we have the non-voter levy. Right, you can see there's some categorical aid in there that we'll break out and talk about here in a little bit. We move down and we talk about our net tax capacity. For those of you that remember a couple months ago, this is the net tax capacity is the value of the properties. That includes the agricultural land, seasonal homes, a few other miscellaneous things, and so on. Okay? If you flip the page over, you can see that we have a lot of categorical aids that are based on net tax capacity that the board controls, right? And you can see that list there, and I'm not going to read all of them to you. But all being said, if you look at the orange line at the bottom, you'll see last year's levy, you'll see this year's levy. And just a couple things there that I want to point out is that no matter what property values do, no matter what different categoricals go up and go down, we're only going to get what's on this document. The school is only going to get the $11,734,000 and change. Okay? So just keep that in the back of your mind. So now we're going to go through and we're going to discuss a little bit section by section to talk about, okay, what's in each one of those. Okay? So what we have in here, again, if you look at the top, referendum market value increased by 6.63%. Okay? Keep that number in the back of your head for a future slide. Okay? So that's for calendar year 22. Okay? So keep that, again, because that's what all these numbers are based off of. All right? Local optional revenue, again, just categorical aid. There's two parts, Tier 1, Tier 2. First one's $424. A couple years ago, they gave us $300 more into that. That's a little over $2 million. We already talked about our voter-approved operating levy is the 3.2. Equity revenue that we falls under the referendum market value. Again, for those of you that don't recall from last year, which I'm sure you all remember what I said this time last year, equity revenue is a way that the state uses to reduce the per pupil disparity between high and low districts based on extra revenue. Okay? So there's two sections to that. There is the metro section and there is the rural. Okay? Obviously we're in the rural section. Okay? So it's really the state's way of trying to equal out those districts that don't have as much as some of the others. Okay? And we have a little bit of transition revenue in here. And transition revenue is a fancy word that the state uses to hold us harmless from any type of statutory changes they make, so that if they make changes that would reduce our revenue, they give us this back as transition revenue to keep us from going farther upside down based on statutory changes. And as you can see, that's almost phased out because we get $42,000, which is not a lot in the big picture here. Okay? So I'm going to stop there for a second. Do we have any questions on that slide? That was a lot in a mouthful. Okay? All right, we're going to move on to the next slide, again, which is some categorical aid based on net tax capacity. Okay? So again, net tax capacity is all properties lumped together based on a very large, complicated state formula that is set in place by our state legislature. Okay? So operating capital. For those of you, we've talked about operating capital in our budget all the time. Chris and I do a lot of work around operating capital. We get $79 per pupil unit plus another $109 times the average age of our building. And then from there, they split it out. Some is aid and some is levy. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Right now, our levy is just about 51%, so about 50-50, right? 50-50 comes from the state, 50-50 comes, or the other 50% comes from the levy. Achievement integration, program that Tracy and Heidi all do in their area. Again, another complicated formula, but statutorily, the levy picks up 30% of that number, which is a very complicated formula of like 350 kids times a percentage of free and reduced over other total kids. Unemployment insurance, this is just kind of a fixed number that we plug in every year based on what we think our needs are going to be, and that gets trued up over time. Safe schools levy, right? $36 per adjusted pupil unit we get for Safe Schools levy, right? And that's all levy, right? Fully levied. Again, $121,000. Career and technical, again, all levy. LTFM, another very complicated formula that I'm not going to go into. And then our lease levy, right? And the lease levy of interest are things like the ice arena that we pay for, the gymnastics time that we pay for our gymnastics program, our SevSec relationship that we have with our special ed co-op, the Roosevelt edition that we just built a couple years ago, and then the FEC that was built back in 2015. Okay. So I am going to take the next couple slides from the front so that we can talk about some of these graphs here in front of you. So this chart is a statewide graph, and what you see here on the blue line represents market value, okay? And what you see here is that market value has been going up and up and up over time, and at the very end it flattens out. The reason why it flattens out is because when this data was put together, they didn't have 23 estimated values yet, and you'll see that on an upcoming slide. The green line represents statewide ADM, okay? And you can see it was going up, 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 and up, and then what happened here, right? We all know what happened there, right? We don't use that word around here anymore. And then it kind of went up, and now it's estimated to kind of go back down a little bit again. Okay, Chris, if you could flip the slide. I think you went too far. Yep, there we go. So this is a graph of the aid levy equalization that I mentioned earlier. And why I put this up here is for two reasons. One, if we start here at the bottom, this is pay 2015 for fiscal year 16, we can see that we got 40% from the state of Minnesota in state aid, and 60% came from our levy. Now we go 8 years later, 9 years later, for those of you, I don't want to walk in front of Leanne, but for those of you that can't read that, projected for 23, we're going to get 6% from the state of Minnesota, and the taxpayers are paying another 94% in levy. So when I talked about our levy going up, this is one of the reasons. And then I'm going to explain in the next example. But you can see the blue piece, the state contribution, is going down over time. So when you hear the state say, Richard, to your comment earlier, that they got $12 billion, whatever the number is, in their pie, well, part of it is they're pushing the money down the hill to the taxpayers of each representative school district. And that's why they have more money to play with. That's not the only reason, but that's part of the reason. Okay? Chris, if you mind flipping slides for me here. So what this is, and I get there's a lot of numbers here. I don't want to scare anybody away. But what this really is the first column is our referendum. State used to work on a 3-tier method. They've now changed it to a 2-tier method. So what they take is our property tax growth, based on that chart I just showed you, and you can see we started out $1.7 billion. Next year it's estimated to be almost $2.7 billion, $1 billion increase in 8 years. Okay? They take our resident pupil units. You can see how that's kind of been pretty steady over time. And they come up with a ratio that's over here in this column. When that ratio exceeds the legislatively set equalization factors down here that have not changed, right? So our values are going up. State maintains this, pushes more debt out to you people in the audience. Okay? We can see that at 567,000, our ratio is here. We levy 79.6%. We look down here, we're over our ratio, 474. We levy 100% of all of our referendum back to the taxpayers based on state formulas. Okay? So, I'm going to stop right there. This is very important for you guys to understand. Is there any questions on this data?
Mr. Gertis, to reiterate, the changes in the percent of aid or the change in the amount payable in terms of percentages is not something that the Faribault Public School District, our board or administration, determines. That is a function of what the state sets. Is that correct?
That is 100% correct, Chad. Okay? This is what the board controls. Everything else from here all the way down the end of the screen are set either by county assessors who assess the property values in this district, or they're set by the state legislature when they set up these equalization factors over here. And those percentages are assumption of math, right? We'll blame that on Richard.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay? Chris, next slide. So, again, might be kind of hard to read from where you're sitting in the room, but this is a graph. This shows our assessed market value of all the properties in the Faribault School District. Okay? So, you can see residential is at 60.5%. Okay? We have a little bit of agricultural HGA. House, garage, and 1 acre. Okay, for those of you that remember that. Other agricultural land, commercials in the green, seasonal cabins are in the light blue, and other is in some funny shade of green on that chart. Okay, so now you move over here. You can see that on the referendum market value, okay, now we're figuring out who's going to pay what, right? We've already determined that the state's pushed everything downhill to the local. Now we're trying to explain who's going to pay what into that shift. Okay? So in the houses, we have 76% of all residential property that goes into the referendum market value. A little bit of agricultural, and this is commercial and industrial. Okay? So now we're up to 76%. If we go over the net tax capacity, when everything is all in, houses, residential is only at 54%, and so on and so forth. Okay? So these are the different buckets that make up all those different categorical aids that you heard me talk about for the last 15, 20 minutes. Okay? Chris? So earlier when I said, remember the 6.63 and the 5.68% increases in calendar year 22? Here's our estimated increases for calendar year 23. 15.79% for referendum market value, and 17.4% for net tax capacity. Pretty big increase estimated for 23. Okay? So again, remember, what the school district gets is not based on this. All we're trying to do figure out right now is who's going to get hit with the biggest tax bill at the end of the day. Or as most people call it, dividing up the property tax pie, right? So if you'll, Chris will hit my next screen for me. Okay? If we look up here at the top, here we can see that there's our 15.79%, our 7.4%. You can see that the tax rate for RMV actually went up, but the tax rate for net tax capacity actually went down by 12%. I'm going to explain why that is. You heard me talk about the residential properties are the biggest piece of the pie, right? So if you split your pie into 4 different areas, the houses get most of it, right? Ag land gets a little bit. Commercial industrial gets a fair share, okay? But you can see here on the residential, and these are estimated, right? Because values haven't been fully set yet, at least at the time this thing went live, that they're estimating residential property values are going to go up 15 to 16%, right? We've just talked about that here based on this chart. And this is how it translates into your property tax numbers year over year. Okay, so we always use $250,000 as the average home here in Faribault School District. That goes up by 15%, goes up to $287. It raises your piece of the pie by $89 on an annual basis. Okay? Richard.
Generally, we want more commercial industrial businesses in our district, right? Because that's a bigger tax base.
In some districts, that is true, okay? But Chris, if you can go back one more, stop right here. Again, Richard, if you look at this pie, commercial industrial is the light green, residential is the blue. So you can see how that is currently split up today, that is not the case in this school district proper. Is that what you were going to ask me?
Well, if we, school districts, we can't approve any kind of projects for industrial and commercial. Only the city can encourage them to come into our district, into the city, and, factories or whatever it is. And then we get to tax them. But does that help with more tax money and lower the residential taxes, right?
So,
Possibly.
no and yes to your questions. We don't get any more tax money. So no matter on who pays what, we're only going to get that $11,734,000 in change that we talked about earlier. Yes, to the second part of your question, would that relieve property tax owners in this district? Absolutely it would. Because now the commercial and industrial will have a bigger piece of the pie and more of the pie to spread the expense over. And this is true whether it's the school district, the county, the city, or anything else. The process works the same for all governmental agencies, right? This isn't just the school district rules. That makes sense?
We should encourage business to come in. First of all, they employ people.
Right.
Then good chance they might be buying a house in Faribault, and of course, they might have kids.
You should have that conversation with the EDA director. I don't know if there is one in this town, but.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you completely, that it would help everybody, all the way around. So we go back to the pieces of, next page, Chris, next slide, thank you. So again, on this slide, again, we have commercial, agricultural non-homesteaded. And what you see here is, again, commercial and industrial going up, tune of about 5%. Ag land going up about 10%. But as you can see farther over to the right, I don't want to stand in front of Jerry, is that what's happening with their property taxes? They're going down. Because now they have a smaller piece of the pie, and percentages, the way they work, is that it shifts that expense more towards the homeowners because the homeowners have a bigger piece of that pie. Does that make sense? I'm going to stop there and ask if there's any questions on this. Okay, Chris, next slide. If we look how this all breaks down, right, on the average home, again, $250,000, how does this break down in terms of this total, right? So we already know the total for 22 is $817 per, okay? So $301 of that 817 is from voter-approved referendum. Those are the two referendums that are currently in place today. Not the one that was voted on a couple weeks ago or whatever it was, okay? That's forward a year. Our categorical aid that we talked about earlier makes up 213. Voter-approved bonds. Again, bonds means net tax capacity. That would be our building debt. Not operations, building debt makes up 115. Our board-approved bonds makes up $12. Those are the abatement bonds that the board approved back in 2019. Just a small portion. And everything else, all the other categorical aid that we're talking about here, including community ed, makes up this top piece of 175. Okay, Chris? So this slide, again, represents payable 22, but this is the breakdown of just operating referendum according to the Big Nine. This does not include any votes that happened this last voting cycle on November 8th. That hasn't all been posted yet to the website. But you can see how we compare just for operating referendum only to our peers. Okay? Austin passed one. Austin passed one this year. Theirs are going to be going up. Red Wing renewed theirs. So that's just in there for really information only. Okay? So we just have a few more slides, then we'll bring this to the end. So the next section we're going to talk about just briefly is community ed. So again, we have some community ed items on here. And you can see those numbers there. I'm not necessarily going to go through that with you. The one thing I did want to point out with community ed is the school-age childcare number, because of the needs in this district does continue to rise every year, and which is the real reason why the community ed portion of this levy went up by $50,000, $60,000. Okay? If you look back to this sheet, again, I kind of missed some of this because I was standing at the screen. But again, you'll see A, B's, and C's over on the right side of the piece of paper. Those are the ones that list any state aid that have a state aid component to it and the dollar amount associated with that. So as we look at item A, there really is only the local optional has a state aid component left. Everything else has been maxed out. If you go down to the B's, that's our net tax capacity. We get a little bit of state aid on those. And then the community ed piece, which is what we were just talking about, is letter C there. Next slide we have is our debt service. So this would be our two bonds that I just mentioned earlier. Our building bond, which is the $2.1 million, and those abatement bonds, which are the $226,000 below. So now we're just going to go into some comparative graphs a little bit here and just talk about, this is the Faribault Schools comparative graphs by area again. So again, remember the dark blue is referendum. The light blue is other referendum market value categorical aids. The dark blue, or dark green, excuse me, is our building debt. Again, that's consistent. You can see that piece of the pie, that's consistent. That was a long-term debt. Our light green, again, is the abatement bonds and a couple other ones that the board approved a long time ago. And then our gray at the top, or silver, is pretty consistent, again, with all the other categorical aids that we don't see a lot of changes in. So again, I want to stop and pause. Do we have any other questions on here before we go into a few more comparative charts? Okay, everybody awake with me yet? Okay, all right. So the next chart we have here really talks about residential. So this is the chart that really affects our residential people that might be in the room, whether that's houses, apartments, townhomes, condos, or anything of the sort. And you can see how we compare to the other Big 9 schools. So for those of you that recall, and Chad recalled this morning, that last year we were on the bottom of this list in terms of total taxes to the homeowner. This year we moved up to third from the left. So again, that's how we compare to our other Big 9 peers. Again, just based on referendum dollars. Okay, and then again, all the numbers are on the side there. Okay. All right. Again, that's based on a median home value of about $220,000, right? They tried to equalize that for comparative purposes. Okay. If we flip to the next page, this talks about our agricultural folks that might be in the audience today. And you can see that our agricultural tax portion has been going down over time. All right? Real reason for that is the ag credit that was put into place back in 2017. So if you look, in 2017, it was 772. Then the green portion of that, the dark green portion, is getting smaller over time. And that's because that ag credit was phased in over time to cap out in 2023 at 70%, which is why the 2023 is the smallest dark green section in this block. Okay? Again, next slide represents the Big 9 equivalent to that chart. Again, we are second from the bottom in that, so the farmers in the room can be happy knowing that we are on the bottom of this this chart, that we tax you guys the least, which was represented in those other charts earlier in the slide. Okay? Again, based on $7,000 an acre, right, for comparative purposes only. Okay? So we're getting close to the end. Bear with me for another hour and a half. Key talking points. Property valuations increase do not change the amount of revenue the district receives. Okay, I've said that multiple times throughout tonight, but I wanted to just bring that home one more time. All right, whatever the value of the property is, it doesn't matter. We're only going to get what you guys authorized tonight and what the assessors and the legislatures and the Department of Ed have approved in this 40-page document here. Okay? Number 2. Increasing valuations can lead to less state aid and larger sharing of revenue coming from the local taxpayers throughout the levy. Hopefully that example with all the numbers brought that home to you guys, is that the state legislatures, unless they change their ratios, are kicking the can out of St. Paul and down to Faribault. Okay? And the third bullet point there, as different portions of the property tax pie change, the property tax burden shifts from the taxpayers with smaller increases, okay, farmers and commercial, to taxpayers with larger increases, which is our residential folks. Okay? Any questions on those? Again, if you don't remember anything else I said tonight, try and remember those points when you fall asleep tonight. All right, the last page is a summary. This breaks everything down by year over year and by fund. So you have the general fund on the top, community education in the middle, and debt service on the bottom, and the appropriate percentages thereof with totals at the bottom. And that is it. So I'll ask one last time. Any questions?
Board members, questions, comments?
Thank you, though.
Thank you.
Okay, so hearing no and seeing no, comments, questions? I believe now we open it up to the public
That is
for
correct.
community comment and/or questions only on what we just saw. We do have a public community comment coming up on anything else, but with regards to the truth in taxation, if anybody has something they'd like to ask or a comment they would like to make, feel free to come on up and we can pass the microphone over. Ms. Zavarro, did we have anybody that registered for community comment regarding truth in taxation? No. So we didn't have anybody before. Is there anybody in this room that would like to come up and make a comment or ask a question? As you all saw, school finance is incredibly simple. Okay. I am not hearing, or excuse me, I'm not seeing anyone. I'm going to take that as a no. With that said, I would entertain a motion to take a 5-minute recess for people to just simply stand up and take a
Do we have to approve this first?
no, I don't believe we approved this at this time. Mr. Gertis, where are you at? Yeah, we'll approve this later on as an action item. Yes.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
There's nothing to approve at this time.
That is correct.
That'll be later.
That is correct.
Okay. So if anybody's interested in a 5-minute recess to just stand up after we've just digested a whole lot,
Yes.
I would entertain a motion to approve that for 5 minutes. and we would start at 5 to 7.
I'll move that we take a 5-minute recess.
Do we have a second?
Second.
A second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of a 5-minute recess, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes 6-0. Thank you. Hi, everyone. So if we can have quiet in the room, please.
Do a little rap on the thing.
If we can have quiet in the room, please. Okay, thank you. I will now entertain a motion to move back into session.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Olson, second by Ms. Cavalier. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. We're now back in session. This now brings us to item 7, School Board Public Comment Guidelines. I will have a brief reading, and then we will have Ms. Zavril bring up some comments and whatnot. This is an opportunity for residents, business, and property owners, parents, students, and employees of the Faribault Public School District to address the board. You must sign up in person at the board meeting and address the board from the podium, which is right here. Members of the public will address their remarks with civility and respect. I'm going to reiterate that one more time. Members of the public will address their remarks with civility and respect. If not, I will interrupt you. And I have not had to do that, so I hope to not have to do that tonight. After being recognized by the chair, each individual will identify themselves and the group they represent, if any. Please state your reason for addressing the board. This is not a time to debate an issue, but for the board to hear your comments. Public comment is not available at work sessions, closed sessions, or special board meetings of the school board. The Minnesota Government Data Practices Act prohibits comment about specific student or staff members even without naming them in open session. This includes the public comment portion of our meeting. The board respects and values input, but when it relates to a specific student, staff, or to a specific matter, such input must be heard by the appropriate personnel such as the building principal or superintendent and not during an open meeting of the school board. Anyone interested in making a public comment will be asked to complete an information card before the meeting starts, providing their name, address, and topic of their comment. All comments must conform to School Board Policy 206, which is available for review on the district website at www.faribault.k12.mn.us. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to make comments on one specific topic. Each topic will have a total of 15 minutes allowed for comments. With that said, if we do happen to have more than 5 comments, I don't know if we will or not, it's a non-issue.
Okay, so this is one topic.
One topic, okay?
This is another topic.
That's another topic, okay?
That was another. That kind of goes in with any of these.
What's that?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay, we'll get to that name.
And then these are all on, and there's 5 of them.
And these are all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got 6.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll get to those last. Okay. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 topics. There is no right, there is no wrong order. We are going to leave the most comments for last, which is on the mental health grant. And if we have, we would take 5 in speaking in support of it, and we would take up to 5 speaking against it, if you will, as we will consider those different topics out of fairness. So when we get to these 6, we will ask what that looks like, and we'll actually alternate, okay? I don't want to try to stack the deck and be accused of this or that. The very first thing we're going to talk about, and I apologize as somebody wrote really fast. Emily Carroll?
I believe I'm speaking on the same item.
You're in that one, okay? If there are more than 5 that are for or more than 5 that are against, I'm going to then put the names in the bucket. Ms. Zavril is going to hold it up high, and I'm going to draw. All right? Now, I also have help me out here, and I apologize in advance here. I believe it's Salid Shardy, and the topic is student-centered learning, equity, family engagement. Now, this individual may not be in this room. This individual may be in one of the other meeting rooms. So if, there's sound in those two rooms?
There is, but there's a delay too, so.
Okay. So if that individual is here, it would be wonderful if they would make their way to the room. And since there is a delay, the next person that I would read is, I believe, Faisal, Faysel, and then the last name, A-L. And once again, that is on equity student-centered learning. So if either of those individuals are still here, I did see some people have to leave. If either of those individuals are still here or in the other rooms, they're welcome to come on in and have their time at the podium. Okay. I don't see them. They may come. If they come, we'll go back to them. All right? The next person is Mr. Mike Cross on school violence. Come on forward, if you would, Mr. Cross. And we will time everybody to 3 minutes. Mr. Bellingham will be keeping the watch. If you get to that 3 minutes, I'm going to remind you, and I'm going to gently remind you to see how close you are to being done. Mr. Cross, go ahead.
All right, my name is Mike Cross. Thank you very much for let me speak tonight. I come here as a community member, a parent, and just a caring human being. We got a problem in the school district with assaults, violence, and not a whole lot being done. When I ran for school board, I backed the transparency, where everybody says you can't get a hold of this person, you can't get a hold of that person. When it comes to school violence, no one wants to talk about it. Okay? I brought it up with everybody that is concerned. I'm not mentioning names or positions. Everybody that should be involved, I got involved. Basically, we're still today. We had a student get assaulted twice, 2 different days. Doesn't show up to school for 8 days. No one reaches out to this family to find out why the student is in school. Congratulations, he's now in Northfield. So we lost another one. I bring it up to some people that are in charge. Nobody seems to care. So we lost another one. We keep doing this, guys, we're going to have nobody. You guys are going to be in a board, we're going to have principals and everything with no kids. Okay? I'm just telling you right now, it is a problem. It's like an alcoholic. If you don't admit there's a problem, you can't help yourself. We need to admit it as a school district. We need to admit it as, and I understand the positions on the board. I'm the board chair at the STEM school. I know what the board can do. It's really not a lot in your hands. I'm here tonight because it's a public comment, and I want the public to hear it. Maybe some changes will start to be made. If they don't, maybe we have people in the wrong positions. Because you're a doctor, don't mean you're a good doctor. You have a medical degree, don't mean you're a good doctor. A teaching degree, don't mean you're a good teacher, etc. Okay? I'm just saying, if there's one person in this room that's a staff member that's not concerned with what I just said, look at a career change. That doesn't involve being around kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. The next one is Miss Brooke Wells, school violence and our children's safety.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brooke Walls, and I am a parent coming here concerned tonight. I have a lot of concerns, as a matter of fact, when it comes to the assaults, the physical assaults that are happening in our public school system. There is nothing being addressed. There is a lot of slaps on the wrist. There's a lot of 3-day suspensions. There's a lot of safe haven that's being created for the assaults that are happening in our public school system because they know they can do it and nothing's going to happen. And it does have to stop. Before someone gets hurt, we do not need to make the news before we all open our eyes and realize that this is a really serious problem. We're all aware of all of the policies as far as the suspensions that you guys lay out and how everything is looked at as far as all of the different ramifications of different types of everything that happens in school on a daily basis. But without legal accountability for these kids who are all creating daily assaults to the point where we have to have law enforcement at these schools, nothing's going to change. And we are going to keep losing all of our students to private schools if something's not done, if a foot is not put down to make a harsher punishment for all of the assaults, whether it's bullying, whether it's beating people up. It doesn't matter what the case may be. When we're not going to do anything about it, nothing's going to change. And this has been an ongoing problem for years and years. And unless we really open our eyes to how serious of a situation this is, what are we all supposed to do? I'm not going to take any more of your time. I've said everything that I need to say. I just hope to see change.
Thank you, Ms. Wells. Did anybody happen to see either of the two individuals their names that I read off earlier? Okay. Do we know if they're out there in the hallway? We don't. Okay. So, I am going to read, no? Okay. I am going to read out your name, and I would just ask, what I'm going to try to do is separate the two into for the grant and not in favor of the grant. Is that fair enough? So that I can try to identify what's what. Ms. Martha Brown, is she in here? 4, okay. I believe it's Jailani Hussein. 4, okay, thank you. Mr. Tom Moline? 3.5. What? You would like to suggest an amendment. Okay, so that's not necessarily, okay, that's fair enough. I apologize. I believe it's Sabal Omar. 4? Did I pronounce your name correctly? Sabat. Thank you. Marcus Daly. Is he still here? Maybe he's in another room. He was here. I spoke to him actually individually. Okay. Jessica Navarro. 4. Thank you. And we had Emily was, Emily who, 4. Okay, thank you. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5. If Marcus Daly is listening and you're in another room, you can feel free to come in. Otherwise, I have 5 that we will start with. Those do not respond. So, okay, and you can see that one as well. Thank you. In no particular order, we're going to do Miss Jessica Navarro first, and then we will move to Mr. Moline, and then we'll go back to the rest of the 4s as far as I'm concerned, and that's what I see here. So, Miss Jessica Navarro, would you please come on forward?
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Jessica Navarro, and as a mother of an Afro-Latina American child that attends the Faribault Public School District, I am here to show my support for the Minnesota Department of the Human Services grant. I also work in the community for the community as a community organizer. I see the struggles many Latin families are facing when trying to find necessary resources for their children when it comes to alcohol or substance abuse or mental health resources. Accepting this grant will provide many benefits for our youth in Faribault because, as Paul Wellstone once said, we all do better when we all do better. And I truly believe this. I hope that you consider supporting the prevention grant. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tom Moline?
Thank you. My name is Tom Moline. I'm from Faribault. I'd like to address ultimately, I'm sure you'll approve and accept this grant. On behalf of the taxpayers, I'd just like to read from your grant application. The Faribault District's application for the grant includes salaries for a full-time project coordinator, a media consultant, a youth coordinator, and $120,000 for six local culturally specific organizations to assist in surveying the community. I think it's wonderful that the state or whatever wants to give $1 million of our dollars back to us to use, and I encourage you to go ahead and approve it. But I would ask you to consider, once this grant is expended, that you would terminate the positions that it creates and don't pick up a mandated ongoing expense for the school district to support this program. Thank you.
Thank you. Any luck finding them? They've all left? Okay, thank you. Sabah? Omar? Is that, sorry, I know you told me once. I apologize.
I can speak English, but I need everybody understand me. So, magacayga waxaa la dhahaa Sabaax Umar anigoo ku hadlaaya waalidiinta waalidka Faribault.
My name is Sabah Umar, and I'm speaking on behalf of Somali parents in Faribault Public School.
Waxaan rabaa inaan ka hadlo garaanka oo state grant.
And I want to talk about the state grant.
Waa ogahay inay dhaheen waxaa la siinayaa ilmaha qaar marka waxaan dhihi lahaa aniga ra'yigayga waalidka Faribault haddaan ahay waxaan dhihi lahaa lacagtaas waan u baahanahay.
I know that they say that this grant is for minority, and I just want to tell you that we need this money, this grant.
Sababta uu leeyahay ilmaha dhan waa ilmaheeni waa anoo hadda 5 cunug haysto oo oo kulligood wada xanuunsadeen dhakhtar markaan geeyay 2 dawo loo qoray inaan dhahamahan marka kulligood haddaan daawo loo qoraynin ilma waa ma siinayo.
Okay. And it's like if I have 5 children and they are sick and I take them to the doctor and the doctor said I can only give 2 of them medicine and I don't have the rest for medicine, I will not say don't give them all, but I will take the 2 that has the medicine for them. I'll give them.
hadhowta lacala markii ilmahaas kuwa kale ay noqdaan sii jiradaan waxaa markaasaan dhakhtarka geynayaa waana la doodayaa sidii loogu qori lahaa ayagana daawo.
Then I will fight for the other kids how they will get medication too, but I will not deny their medication when they get that.
waxaan kaloo dhihi lahaa hadda haddii ay yihiin Soomaali migratiga ilmaha way u baahan yihiin caawinaad badan oo inta aan ku soo koobi karin ayay u baahan yihiin in lacagtaas loogu qabto sidaas daraadeed kuwa caawinaadda raba marka hadda caawinaadda siino kuwa kalena ayagana waa isla korayaan maadaama Faribault isla yihiin waxay isla noqonayaan dad u wada baahan markaas aqoontooda sareyso.
So if I come back to the analogy, if the grant allowed for the minority kids, if they get the grant and they get better and they get prevention of the drugs and all the resources that they can get from other students or other kids who did not get the grant also will benefit because of this is a prevention. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Jelani Hussein?
Better
to have your own timer than be timed. My name is Jalan Hussein. I'm the Executive Director of CARE Minnesota. And I'm here today in support of the school district accessing this particular grant. In the past week, I've spoken to a lot of parents and community members, our staff, and first of all, I had the opportunity to review last meeting in the decision that determined the rejection of this grant. And I would just say I'm extremely disappointed with the two board members who gaslighted the minority communities.
Sir, I just want to make sure we don't want personal attacks.
Okay.
Thank you.
You can review the meeting and the videos. I wish that statement that you have behind you is over there so that all of you can actually understand what your mission actually says. The state of Minnesota has the worst achievement gap for children of color, particularly black children. Whether you accept it or not, it's a fact. You're not educating our children the same way you're educating the predominant majority of the population here, or white students. The white students here in the state of Minnesota are doing really well, and we're happy about that. We want them to even exceed even beyond that. But right now, the state of Minnesota is not educating our children in a manner that is befitting of all students. This grant may not necessarily address the achievement gap directly, but it does address it indirectly. And one of the biggest things that impacts the children of color is the cradle to prison pipeline, which is also called the school to prison pipeline. The state of Minnesota is giving opportunities for school districts like yours to have resources like this grant, to be able to put it into the community and the school, to be able to address issues that impact communities of color. And I not only urge you to vote for it, but I'm also concerned as we move forward that you're not keen on interest of making sure all of the students are being successful. You have a 50% graduation rate for black students in 4 years. 50%. That means half of the students, half of the parents who are here today, their children may not graduate from this school. As the leaders of this school district, you should be working really hard to make sure that every student who shows up at the doors of this school district can be successful. Trying to defund the public schools by not having grants and claiming that it's discrimination against white students is not only unfair, it is sad. And I just hope that tonight, as you see many of the parents here, many of them are not ready to speak, but at least they're here to share with you that take their students seriously. Let's fix this problem. It's not just only about this grant. Let's make sure this grant and many other grants that can be advocated for are advocated for. Is that the alarm?
That's the alarm.
That is the alarm. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Martha Brown.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Martha Brown. I have a master's and doctorate in education. I am an adjunct professor at Eastman Mennonite University in their graduate teacher education program. I'm a substitute teacher at Faribault High School in addition to accompanying the high school choruses and the middle school choruses. I have a vested interest in the health and well-being of Faribault's young people, and I'm here to urge this board to vote for accepting the grant funds for mental health and substance abuse prevention. I would share that in normal times this would be a no-brainer. Given the budget deficits, this should be a no-brainer. It's a sad reflection of the state of this country and the state of this community that mental health and substance abuse prevention has been so politicized. and as an esteemed member of this community who couldn't be at this meeting tonight, just texted me, can't even believe we're having this discussion. This should be a no-brainer. When I started working with students last year, I was struck by how many students were depressed, withdrawn, disengaged, and suffering. Some come from homes where there's substance abuse, domestic violence, and poverty. And that only added to the trauma that they were experiencing from the shelter-in-place and closed schools during the COVID pandemic. Our kids need help. They're not okay, and they need help. And I had a couple stories specifically that I could have told you, but that would violate the guidelines. So what I will say is that I've had multiple conversations with many, many students who have been stressed out, anxious, and depressed. It's our duty as educators and as a community to help these students. Those of us who work with the kids want to be able to say, hey, I see you're hurting and you're struggling, and let's talk about how we can get you the help you need so that you can feel better. We want to help students who are feeling overwhelmed, anxious, and depressed and stressed out from having to turn to illegal substances like fentanyl and meth that we read about every day in the papers of adults getting arrested for using and trafficking in this very community. We want to stop the kids from having to turn to those because we can get them the help that we need. None of us want to have to tell our struggling, hurting students, especially our Black, brown, and Indigenous students, that there was no help for them because a bunch of white school board members didn't think they were deserving of the help they needed. If you truly believe these students don't deserve help they need and choose to vote against accepting these funds, I then ask you to resign from this school board, because people who don't care enough about young people of color should never be in a position to make policy that negatively affects their lives.
Ms. Brown, are you almost done?
Our kids are not okay. You can help them by voting yes to accept these grant funds.
Thank you. Next up is Emily Carroll.
Hello, my name is Emily Carroll. I'm a nurse practitioner here at Health Finders Collaborative, and I've worked in Faribault as well as in the schools for about 12 years. And I've done primary care, and for the last 3 years I've been working with substance use disorder and patients struggling with opioid use disorders. And many of the folks in the back have worked with me for the past 3 years. In fact, there's one woman standing right behind me who mentioned before I started doing this work that working in chemical health can be so incredibly rewarding because people can get better. And the work that all of us do here can be so powerful. So I ask you to join us in this rewarding, powerful work and give us more tools so we can help more kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I believe that concludes the community comment section. So thank you to all of you that came forward. To the three, if you're watching on tape delay or something, I apologize that we didn't get to you sooner. This brings us to item 8, the consent agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Robichaud, a second by Ms. Lechtenberg. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Just as a reminder to everybody in the audience, people watching from home, the consent agenda is the only item on our agenda where we do not have a discussion. So I intentionally missed it. That brings us to item 9, retirements, and I do not see any retirements this evening. Next thing is item 10, finance. Mr. Gerdes, you're back at the podium. Item 10A is the minutes from November 14th. Hopefully you've all had a chance to review that, and that's just simply a report So we'll move into item 10B, which is budget. And Mr. Gertis, if you want to start with the enrollment report, if you would, please, 10B1.
Nobody's sick of me yet, huh?
Not yet.
So, because of the timing of this board meeting and November financials not even being...
Mr. Gertis, one thing. Mr. Rutherford, is there any way to put these up on our screens again, or no? The attachment, he's going to go through a few of these. Is that possible?
There's only one.
Oh, just one?
Yeah.
But if possible, it's just nice for the people online and the people here, if they can follow along, if that's possible. Thank you. We did not.
Take them off board book.
Go ahead if you want. I won't hold this up.
Okay. So the, you hear me? So with the month of November not even being over when the board documents were due to be published, we don't have any true financial reports tonight since we weren't able, obviously, to pull those together. But the one report I do have tonight to present to the board is just an update on our student enrollment. Again, I alluded to this a little bit earlier during our TNT meeting, but based on the report that you have out on board books, the current projection right now sits at 123 students over budget, the adopted budget that the board set back in June, 123. Now, again, remember, and I've said this every month, and until we do a revised budget, I'll continue to say this, is that after the adopted budget was put into place, the school board voted to change our PSEO model to a contracted PSEO model. So, as I mentioned last month, that is 44 kids for the first semester, making an assumption that that will increase a little bit for second semester because our second semester usually goes up a little bit. That means that based on what we know at the end of November, we're 79 students ahead of budget. At the proverbial $8,000 is a big chunk of change, okay? Now again, it's still only at the end of November. Things constantly change, numbers constantly change. But as I said last month, and I'll say again this month, we're definitely to the positive, and that's definitely good news for Faribault schools.
Any questions for Mr. Gertis regarding the enrollment report? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
As Mr. Gertis mentioned, there is no comparative financial report or investment report or financial analytics report as of tonight. So that brings us to 10B5, gifts and donations, which is resolution 23-23. The first donation on here is Miss Ella Bettner. You may remember her from our meeting just a few weeks ago. Young lady, a young student, but her donation is money for the tummies, $1,303, and that's for the food service donation for negative meal accounts. The next donation is Faribault Area Chamber of Commerce, $1,827.96 towards a community education summer STEAM program in attendance to National Summer Learning Conference for Valerie Kluzak. The next donation is Faribault Area Chamber of Commerce, $67,144.25 for the H2C program, miscellaneous equipment, MIG welders, laser engravers, etc. for the trades program, and that's, I believe, what Mr. Little presented on earlier. The last donation on here is donations for the Nest at the Faribault High School, Annette Schwartz, a bag of clothing. So those are the donations to be approved here tonight, and I will entertain a motion to accept these donations.
Mr. Chair, I'll move Resolution 23-23.
Thank you, Mr. Bellingham. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham, a second by Mr. Olson. Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none. Mr. Bellingham, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham, aye. Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
Leanne Lechtenberg,
Aye.
Richard Olson,
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud,
Aye.
Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes 6-0.
Thank you, Mr. Bellingham. And once again, just thank you to those individuals that graciously made a donation. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. That brings us to item 10C, items reviewed by the Finance Committee and are suggested for board approval. 10C1, consider approval of the Minnesota Department of Human Services Prevention Grant. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Robichaud and a second by Ms. Cavalier. Any further discussion, or Mr. Benty, would you or any of your leadership team want to talk any more about this? You have any thoughts that you'd like to share?
Cabinet has a presentation to kind of go over this again, if you would like.
Okay, I think that'd be great. We have an audience, and so I think that'd be wonderful.
No, I mean Cabinet.
Thanks for having us back to talk about the Prevention Partnerships for Healthy Youth grant opportunity. This is going to be a very similar presentation to what we gave at the work session, because the grant is the same as it was at that time. So we should touch a little bit on that.
This slide is probably the one that is different than the presentation that we gave at the work session, and this is just because we have had a couple of questions about whether this grant was pursued because we felt like it or because there had been, in fact, an identified need. And we just want to confirm that, in fact, there had been an identified need. At a summer board meeting, we had a Somali parent come and testify before you during the comment period about the needs of the Somali community, of our Somali students, and very specifically talked about substance use prevention as one of the issues that was foremost in her mind. Following that, our student success coordinator, Dr. Schultz, met with this parent, and I believe there were some of you as board members who also, and Mr. Benty as superintendent, met with a parent and others from the community. And substance use needs really was highlighted as one of the needs that they were seeing in the community and wanted to be addressed. Additionally, I was contacted as the behavioral health coordinator for the district by representatives from Allina Health, from the Rice County Chemical and Mental Health Coalition, and the Rice County Family Services Collaborative to understand, following this conversation at the board meeting, about what we were doing as a school district to support our Somali community specifically around substance use prevention. So just understand that that was the need that had been identified. So then later in August, Zach identified this grant opportunity that came to us from the Department of Human Services, their Behavioral Health Division. So just as a reminder, these were the parameters that were set by the state, that the grant is to develop and implement substance use disorder primary prevention to reduce youth alcohol, nicotine, and other drug use in Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities. So we spent a long time debating whether we as a school district should apply or whether the community should apply. And we decided that as a school district, we were best positioned to be the lead applicant for this because of the reach that we have with our student population. But we were only comfortable doing it in partnership with community organizations that have excellent relationships in the community and in particular do a better job of reaching families. So.
As we discussed in the past, there was tremendous partnerships that went into this application. And again, as Emily Carroll mentioned earlier, there are a lot of stakeholders in this work who work collaboratively with the school district on these important issues. And partners like Allina Health, the Faribault Area Chamber of Commerce, the Faribault Police Department, Growing Up Healthy, Health Finders, Healthy Community Initiative, Rice County Community Corrections, Rice County Family Services Collaborative, the Rice County Mobile Opioid Support Program, Rice County Public Health, Rice County Sheriff's Office, RISE, Somali Community Resettlement Services, and WANO all worked together and submitted letters of support for this proposal. I think it's really important for the board to recognize that a decision to not move forward with this grant also impacts all of these community partners as well. I know you've heard from several of them are here tonight, and the level of partnership and commitment to our young people in this district from these partners is truly incredible, and we're really lucky to have them working with us on this project. And last but not least, parents and youth are at the heart of this proposal. As you'll recall, really relying on the voices of students and parents to help us design where this project is going is the central tenet of this proposal, and it's part of why we are so excited about this possibility. So following the application process, the state decided to select only 4 applicants statewide. Faribault Public Schools was one of those 4 applicants selected. Again, it was a competitive process, and we are a lucky community to be one of the 4 entities selected across Minnesota. We're currently in this negotiating with the state of Minnesota to receive just over $1.1 million that would allow us to support prevention work through September of 2025.
So one of the things that I think is important for us to highlight is that this grant, again, back to that slide that described the grant parameters set by the state, is primary prevention. And one of the things that I want to make sure is clear is that we already have other resources in the district that address things at other points along the continuum in the experience of substance use. So, for example, we already have 2 community health specialists, chemical health specialists, who are full-time employees of the school district, and they work with all of the students. Many of the students that they meet with are self-identified. They decide that they're struggling with an issue and they'd like to meet with a chemical health specialist. Some of them are referred by teachers and staff who recognize that they might be experiencing a problem. And some of them do get in trouble, and they're referred because they've had some sort of a discipline issue that's a chemical health violation. But what our chemical health specialists are doing is fantastic, phenomenal work. And this grant is not intended to replace or supplant that work, but to add another layer of specific primary prevention work. So one of the grant strategies that is really important to understand that is specified by the state, it's a required strategy for us, is called positive community norms. This is a strategy in which we understand better what the actual norms in a community are instead of operating on assumed and often inaccurate norms. So for example, if you go out to dinner with other people and you're sitting at the table and everybody pulls out their cell phone, you might feel like, well, that's the norm, I'm going to pull out my cell phone too, and then nobody actually talks to each other. But if everybody actively puts their cell phone in the middle of the table and it's clear we're not doing that, we're actually going to talk to each other, that norm is established, and so then everybody puts their phone down and starts speaking with each other. If we think, though, sometimes norms are things that we can't actually see, like the norms of a small table of people. If we think that the norms in a community are different than they actually are, that can influence our behavior. So when young people in our community believe that all of their peers are drinking on the weekend or using drugs, then that can influence their behavior, and they think, well, if everybody is doing that, then maybe I should be doing that too. Positive community norms gives us the ability to find out from the students themselves what their behavior actually is, and then report on what we know to be true positive community norms, that the vast majority of our students are not engaging in substance use behavior. And we want all students to hear that so that they then can act based on a true understanding of norms. So that's the positive community norm strategy. The second important strategy is one that we specifically wrote and put into this grant. It is not specified by the state, but was our choice to put in. And it is a form of collaborative design. The idea here is that we do not know what our community needs. Our community knows what they need. And what we want to do is work directly with our community, specifically the identified community organizations, with our students directly and with families, to hear from them what they believe they need to help prevent substance use with their students. So we will be working directly with the populations we plan to serve. We're talking families, we're talking students, we're talking community organizations. They will identify strategies that they believe will be effective. We'll then implement those strategies, and then we'll adjust. We'll evaluate. Are those strategies working? We'll go back to the community and find out. Do you think this did what we hoped it was going to do? Do we need to tweak it a little bit? And then we'll try it again. And that's the idea behind this collaborative design. It's an iterative process where we keep reviewing and improving so that we get better and better as we go.
So again, here's where we are right now, hoping that the board will vote to approve to move forward with this grant, at which case we will work to finalize the contract with the Minnesota Department of Human Services. After that happens, we will post, the grant does require a full-time project coordinator position, as well as a media consultant role. We will post for those following the finalization of the contract. We will also, as we talked about earlier, work on contracts with local culturally specific organizations. As we know, those organizations are uniquely positioned in our community to connect with youth and families. And then, as Janet mentioned, we will begin working with Somali and Latino students and organizations to begin to implement this work.
Thank you. We appreciate the presentation. Mr. Benti, is there anything you would like to add before we open it up for comments and questions from the board members?
I'll put this in here. I know as I'm not a member of the board and I don't have a vote, but as a superintendent of the schools, I would urge you to vote yes for this. The reason I say that is because I feel it's important that we support our community in the struggle that they are going for. I also feel it is important that we support our students in the struggle that they are asking for. I've heard a lot of people talk about the discrimination piece around it. My piece is, as a former educator, as a current educator, I will go for any grant that helps any student. And if it leaves out a certain group, then we will look for money to help that group as well. I feel that it's my position to bring to the board all money that can help our students and help our community, and I will be continuing to do so, but it is your job to vote on those issues.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Board members, I will open it up for any comment, any questions you want to ask any of our leadership team, and I will also include our student representative in this as well if she has any comments or thoughts. So, Mr. Robichaud, you want to
Mr.
start?
Chair, thank you. I do have some comments, and thank you very much, folks, for the work that you put forth. And Mr. Superintendent, thank you for your comments recently about how you look for funds to support all kids, whatever it has to be. Unfortunately, I wasn't at the last board meeting when the vote was taken, but I did watch the video of the last meeting, and thank goodness they have sales on TVs, because now I have to buy a new TV. But I was disappointed and thought how unconscionable the acceptance of the grant was not approved. And with all due respect to the differences that we have on this board, and that's going to be coming probably more so, and that's okay to have differences because that creates healthy discussions. But I want to state publicly why I support acceptance of this grant and what it means. The grant is intended, as it was just laid out, to address a need in our community, not only our school system, but our community. And as we take a look at that, it's addressed in a collaborative way. And that's really a credit to this community of Faribault and the school district that will work with some 15 different agencies in addressing the need that we have in this community. Moreover, it's intended to provide services to a segment of our population that has been denied equitable services for decades. And it is something that this grant will hope to address some of that denied services. Further, there's a history of grants funding to address inequities. Title IX, which addressed gender issues that were very definitely involved. The support of women athletics and others. The famous No Child Left Behind, which was really intended to deal with students in poverty. And most students in poverty were persons of color. ELL enrollment that addresses pretty much students of color. Okay, as I roll my thing here. Even the seminal Supreme Court case, Brown versus the Board of Education, was in fact specifically identified as segregation, and that segregation was not equal to what white students were getting. And in fact, that in itself, and that still goes on and on. To the individuals who asked why white students were not included, and again, with all due respect, mainly I think because white students come with a white privilege and have the unequal benefits of such privileges. Our students of color do not have the same opportunities. However, I believe that the ripple effect, or maybe a much broader than the ripple effect, of this grant will spread across the whole community and include all students eventually. We have a moral imperative to address the needs within our school and our community. This grant will help us fulfill our moral duties. Even without this grant, isn't this something that we should be addressing as we've identified the need? A few board meetings ago, at one of our work sessions, our student representative made a comment articulated and passionately about how she was excited about this grant being approved and how we needed it in our community. It's a voice we need to listen to. And so I hope this vote passes 6-0 and is truly a reflection of this board's commitment to and a demonstration of not just our verbal commitment, but a demonstration of our foundation of our core beliefs and values of equity.
Thank you, Mr. Rocha. Ms. Lechtenberg?
So I want to thank you all for going the extra mile and walking this grant through very carefully a second time. I really do appreciate that. And I truly hope that $1 million grant will do something to combat the substance abuse problem that we have. Then I would like just to remind people that the reason I opposed the grant wasn't because I opposed helping the BIPOC population. I wanted to be sure that all parts of our population need that help would receive it. And we have many other families that don't have the resources. I just want to make sure that they have access to this. Never did I say that the BIPOC community wasn't worthy of additional support. All who need it are worthy. For that, I have been called a white supremacist, an oppressor, a white woman using whiteness to oppress the already oppressed, and I could go on for quite a while, but I know you get the idea. I'm not sorry it happened because this has opened an amazing conversation, and I have learned a lot, and I know many people that I have talked to have learned a lot as well. I encourage all people, and especially educators, to be careful of labeling people as racist just because they don't agree. It is not wrong to have conversations with why we are doing something. We have school employees and community members who have questions they will never ask because they do not want to be called racist. Fear does not bring a community together. Neither do 1,000 emails from an activist organization. Fortunately, most of the people from this community who contacted me did so with respect. Alina Clinic, the Faribault Police Department, and many individuals. The most impactful email was from a Faribault resident who has struggled with substance abuse and thought with this current grant there might be another way to get more help for all of our students. If this grant brings more treatment options, that is always a good thing. I voted no last month because I didn't want to send a message that only certain races will benefit from this. I wanted to be sure that students of all races with substance abuse issues would be helped. The emails and phone calls that I have received have convinced me of that, and I appreciate the time the community has taken, the board has taken, and the grant writers have taken to help understand that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Lechtenberg. Any other comments or questions from board members or student representative? Mr. Olson.
I don't know what to say. I've talked to a lot of people. That some are in the audience. I like the grant because it helps students. But I'll say again, it does not help all students. Everybody needs help, white, black, brown, whatever it is. And I will be voting no on this. This has got out of hand. If I vote no, some letter we got here, an email, that if I vote no, it's dereliction of my duties. Also, if I vote no, I'm a racist. I'm not a racist. And then Leanne mentioned a group. I've got 900 emails from various people saying the same thing from all over the country. I even tracked down one. I just picked one. And with the name and address on it. That house is for sale, and I called the agent, and the person mentioned is dead. So I don't know what's going on. To me, that's harassment on the board members. Again, I'm consistent. I'll vote no. This will pass, I know that, but it will not have my support.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Other board members with comments or
I have
questions?
some comments to
Ms.
make.
Cavalier.
I unfortunately wasn't here for this vote, or else we wouldn't be in this situation. I'm really proud that you're sitting together as a team. I think that's really important. We're going through some hard times, and I think there's more ahead of us, and I hope you come together and sit like this in front of the board more often. I appreciate that you've done this for each other. I think the message is completely heard from me that you're sitting together as a team. I hope in the future you will pursue grants, even if a mother doesn't come and argue for a need for themselves. I hope you jump if you see something that will benefit our district. And I hope if it's geared to helping students of color, you will go for it. Because I think it is racist to deny a $1.1 million grant for this city and this district because it's around the needs of students of color. Sometimes when I sit here on the board, I wonder if I'm working for the same school district as everybody else, or as some of my colleagues. And I can't believe that we're in a meeting debating whether or not we should support a grant focused on prevention efforts for students. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the district that I still work for today is 60% student of color. The middle school, 60% student of color. And I believe our understanding is that the numbers at the middle school and high school present lower because students don't report and families don't report as kids get older and as teenagers don't want to turn in certain paperwork. Jefferson is 76% students of color. Roosevelt, 66% students of color. Lincoln, 69% students of color. Am I correct with that information? The other thing that concerns me when I sit on this board, and I only have a little bit time left here, is that we don't all understand what goes into student achievement. It is not simply good instruction. It is not simply excellent teachers. It is not simply whether or not we teach the basics. But we have housing issues, mental health issues. We have students who do not feel welcomed and valued in our school communities because of their identities. We have students with health and wellness issues, students in poverty in this city. We have morale issues with our faculty and our staff and our students and our families. We have families that don't feel safe in our school, students who don't feel safe in our school. We have a need for drug prevention across our community. We have people who do not have access to the same resources, and we have families who are struggling. So you cannot tell me for a minute that our test scores are gonna go up without significant intervention, and this is the kind of intervention we need to do, so thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for seeking this time. Finally, and Mr. Olson, I'm speaking directly to you with all due respect, but we will not be able to attract businesses and young families and new families to this district to help spread out the tax base or to increase enrollment in this district if this kind of embarrassment is what puts us on the front of the Star Tribune.
Thank you, Ms. Cavalier. Mr. Bellingham or Sophia, do you have anything?
Hi, I'm Sophia Mentz. I'm 18 years old, and I'm a senior at the Faribault High School, and I'm a student representative. I just want to start off by saying congratulations. Being one of 4 selected in our entire state is a huge achievement, and you guys obviously have done very amazing work. I want to point out that this is a great opportunity for more than 50% of students, and a lot more than I even knew before, but that's amazing, and you're helping so many students, and you're going to change so many lives with this. Another thing is, this really focuses on our goals as a school district. Looking at item number 1 on our agenda are our 5 strategies: student-centered learning, equity, mental health and safety, school climate, and family and community engagement. And you hit every single one of those on the dot in this grant. It benefits everyone when we can all be healthy and safe together, no matter the skin color. At the end of the day, I truly believe this grant will save lives, and just a reminder that this grant is going to students, just like me, who's a real person, who's really struggling. And I think the work you're doing is probably one of the most amazing things I've gotten to experience on my time at the board. So, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Mr. Bellingham, do you have any comments or thoughts?
I do. I wish I would have went ahead of her because she's much more eloquent
She's
than
amazing. You're amazing. Amazing.
that I am. So, but I'd like to, first of all, I'd like to thank the grant writers and all the work you've done in support of this. Second, as a reminder, I did make the motion at the last meeting for approval. So, and third, I wanted to say something. I didn't want to be the only board member who didn't say anything up here. But even though, and those who emailed me, I'm sorry I did not get back to you, but the computer was kind of full with that thing. But overall, putting aside a 36-year teaching career, but when I became a board member, I became a board member for 3 things. Number 1, to do what's best for students. Number 2, to do what's best for the district. And number 3, do what's best for this community. And I believe this grant answers all 3 of those. And Mr. Hussein is correct. That message behind us here fits perfectly, and that's something we should read or we should acknowledge before every meeting before we start. So I'd like to thank all of you who contacted me once again, and for the grant writers and all you did, but this is needed in our community, and this will make us better. We all do better when we all do better.
Thank you, Mr. Bellingham. Board members, any other thoughts or questions for our administrative team? No. Okay. So in closing, I don't have anything to add that all of these people haven't said. If you know me, some of you in here know me pretty well. If you know me, I'm a glass half full person. And I believe that this conversation and discussion that came out of this can be a real springboard for us in our community. With that, I would ask all of you to become more involved than you already are. If you are involved, can you up it a little bit? If you aren't involved, can you get involved? We face many different challenges, as all of you know. Whether it's on this grant, whether it's school violence, whether it's bullying, whatever. I don't have to tell you. We can make a difference if we all come together. And I would use this as a real opportunity for all of us to come together. I coach basketball. I'm lucky enough to coach basketball. I see a young man sitting a couple rows back here, Shafi, who played basketball at Mankato East. He knows what I'm going to say. Sports are an ultimate unifier. And let's use this as a unifier to bring people together. And the next time that we have something where we need help, let's recruit another person or 2. All right? Let's not call names to people that disagree with us. It doesn't do us any good. We're adults in this room. We're not 7th graders. We're not 3rd graders. We expect more from our students. We should all expect more from ourselves. I've seen some of the emails that Mr. Olson has referenced. You're not going to win somebody over by accusing them of something. It doesn't help. What does help is through conversation like this and education. And it may still not help. But that's the only way to get through to somebody if you truly want to make change. With that said, You've heard from the board. We have a motion by Mr. Robichaud. We have a second by Ms. Cavalier. And with that, I will,
Roll call vote, please.
with that, Mr. Bellingham, will you please do a roll call vote?
Certainly. John Bellingham, aye. Courtney Cavalier,
Aye.
Leanne Lichtenberg,
Aye.
Richard Olson,
No.
Jerry Robichaud,
Aye.
Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes 5-1.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. With that, we will move on to item C2. If anybody wants to stay, we got a lot of good stuff here on the agenda. We'll move on to item C2. You know what, I'm just going to pause here for 30 seconds or a minute.
Next time, Scott.
Maybe my mic is, am I on? Okay, thank you. If you are leaving the room, I just ask if you do so quietly as we're going to continue the meeting. The next item on here is 10C2, consider approval of the lowest responsible bidder for the Roosevelt Elementary School boiler and chiller project. If Mr. Gertis and Mr. Smith want to come forward, I will entertain a motion to approve this, and then we will have them do a little presentation or answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Chair, also move.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham and a second by Ms. Lechtenberg. Gentlemen, would you like to briefly walk us through this?
Well, I'll start and I'll let Kane pick up all the pieces that I'll leave later on, which is usually what he does anyway. Last month we came to the board to talk about some of the needs at Roosevelt and our LTFM 10-year plan and a project that we wanted to bring to the board to get approval and go out for bid because we have a long lead time on the chiller for this individual project. Bids were taken a couple weeks ago, and we're here today to talk, request permission to award the bid to New Line Mechanical out of Byron, Minnesota. They are the lowest responsible bid, and they've been vetted and approved by ISG. With that, I'll turn over specifics to Kane.
Specifics, what you said.
Mr. Olson.
Yeah, I'm concerned with such a range. From 877,000 to 1.5 million. Why?
Many factors.
Can you move the mic a little closer?
Yeah.
Thank you.
There could be many factors into that, and to be honest, I don't have a great answer for you because I don't know what the bidders were thinking, or many things. It could be union wages affected. Could be construction companies have enough jobs already on their list, so they bid it high. And
personally, I would like to know, because I'm in the field, that's quite a range. Like, why such a high bid? Why such a low bid? I always call it low qualifying bid. That's what I'm used to in my business. I like to, I'll be voting no on this because it's such a wide range. What are we getting for it? It's too bad the mechanical engineer's not here to, and some details from these companies like, oh, we got many jobs, so we'll bid it high like we might get it. Well, okay, I understand that, but this is wide range.
Did you guys vet the bids and you feel confident with the bids?
So if you look in the board pack, there's a letter drafted by Justin, is it Steffel, is that how you pronounce his last name? With ISG, who actually did that. That was a conversation that
Remember you
Justin
explained
and
that this morning.
Kane and I had at the bid opening, to make sure that this was a legitimate bid. I think, Mr. Olson, to your question, to be real honest, if Justin were sitting here today, he couldn't give you an answer any better than what myself or Kane can give you, because he doesn't know what went into the minds of, Brennan Mechanical or Davis Mechanical or Ryan Mechanical. Ryan and both Brennan are union shops, all right? And I know that for a fact because I've done work with them in the past. And so maybe they bid a union wage, right? Which is, you're well aware, being in the field, union wage can easily be double what a non-union shop can do. And if New Line Mechanical doesn't have any work lined up, they obviously want to keep their guys happy and employed versus putting them on unemployment. So I think those are probably two of the main reasons why there is such a spread in this. The other thing is there could be a travel. There could be union issues with getting people off the bench. I don't know.
Well, we're spending near $1 million. I'd like to know why, instead of just approving it and just, I know the lead time, I know that's critical, but.
I don't honestly know that a vendor, right? If I was a vendor, a mechanical contractor, I would not typically engage in a conversation why I put 30% on a project versus 10, right? I'm not going to go tell an engineer that, because that won't look good upon my reputation. So I would decline to give those answers that you're looking for. And so as I say today, I don't know, other than driving and intimidating somebody, how I can get that information for you to answer your concerns as we're approached here. I think Kane and I did our due diligence as it was wrapped around making sure that they were vetted by the contractor, make sure that they bid everything per specification designed by the professionals that we hire to put these bid packages together. So I guess that's really all I got to say.
Again, I'll state, my concern is such a wide range.
Yeah, and that was
And
also...
that's what, if it wasn't that, I wouldn't be talking to you right now.
Did you guys talk about this at the facilities committee meeting?
Thanks. No, this was not brought up at the facility committee meeting just because of the lead time.
Because we need to move fast, because
We
you said
needed
it
to
was
move.
already
Yeah, we're already looking into next fall before the chiller even arrives. We didn't want to push it back any farther. So I did send out an email to the facility committee, letting them know what was going on and if they had any questions, so.
Board members, other questions or thoughts, concerns? Mr. Olson, I recognize your comment, but I also recognize the work that they've done, and that, I know several people in the construction business and the trades business, and I can't imagine they would ever tell you why they would bid low or bid high. It is what it is. As long as ISG, who's the engineer on this, has vetted them, I would assume they've done some form of a background check, that this isn't their first boiler job. All that I strongly support it, and I think our budget was 1.1 million estimated, and so if this saves us a couple $100,000, I would say hallelujah.
The one other thing, if you look at the bid tab that was in there, and to Mr. Olson's point, he is correct, there's $620,000 difference, right, between top and bottom. But if you throw out the top, the difference there is south of $400,000, right? So I've in personal life have bid a lot of jobs, right? Maybe the guy made a math error, right? I've done that in my life. So if you take the top one out, then your spread becomes a little bit more amenable with just over $400,000, which on a $900,000 project is only about 35% difference, 40%, right? Rough math in my head. So I don't think that's too far out of place.
Okay, board members, any other thoughts or questions? All right, hearing none. We do have a motion by Mr. Bellingham. We have a second by Ms. Lechtenberg. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes 5-1. Thank you. That now brings us to item 10C3, consider approval of cybersecurity policy for calendar year 2023.
So I'll start in here real quick, but I'm going to let Casey talk about this. So a couple months ago, we came to the board asking permission to submit an RFI for cybersecurity insurance, and as Chad alluded to, our cybersecurity policy runs on a calendar year, not on a fiscal year, right? So it is coming for renewal here on January 1st. Board authorized that. We did go out and get an RFI, gathered a lot of information that Casey will talk about, proceeded to do some quotes, and I'll let Casey walk through the information in front of you.
Yeah, so we learned a lot in going through an RFI. We learned more about what is covered in the event of a cybersecurity attack and with insurance. We learned about what we can do to better posture ourselves, both for cybersecurity insurance as well as in the case of an actual attack. The biggest thing I think we've gotten out of this process is the fact that we now have a partner to work with in this process. So as we learn and grow as a small organization who can't afford to have a dedicated expert cybersecurity team, we now have one that we can work with. We did get 4 proposals in our RFI, one of which was not actually an insurance proposal. It was actually just a cybersecurity expert offering their services, so that was tossed out. A second was out of state and had no schools that they worked with in the state, and so we did not respond to their request as well. And that left us with 2 brokers that had filled out the information that we were asking for. Those 2 brokers were Marsh McLennan Agency and Gallagher. And I had many interactions with them over the last month or so as we went back and forth about how can we improve what we're looking like as we are looking for actual quotes. We implemented a number of things in the last month just to make that posture a little bit better, to hopefully get a better, really a better policy. We added multi-factor authentication on our VPN, so anybody who is trying to access our network from outside of the network, we have a few individuals who are able to do so, and we have made sure that that is protected by multi-factor. We severely limited the number of people, so we had more people previously, and we've cut that down quite significantly. All of this was because we now have partners. And this is the thing that we were looking for. We wanted to save some money. Part of this, really this whole process started because we got surprised, right? We ended up with a bill that was 3 times higher than our old bill at this time last year. That said, the thing we gain is somebody to work with to continue ongoing working on that process. So in the end, you can see on the table on the memo that our current policy sits just a little bit higher than $27,000. We got a quote from CFC, that's the policyholder, and through Gallagher, the broker, that was for a little bit higher than that, $29,000. Their deductible is, generally speaking, $20,000. Now, I will say that there are a few items that don't necessarily fall within $20,000. They shift it depending on the line item. But generally speaking, it was 20 versus Tokyo, our old policy was $100,000 deductible. So that meant with our old policy, if we got hit with something, we were on the line for up to $100,000 until the policy kicked in. Similarly, we got a quote from policyholder Cowbell, and that's working through Marsh McLennan for just over $23,000. That deductible is slightly higher. 3 of us sat down, Scott, myself, and Brian Klyer, our network administrator. And we looked over the policies, and from everything we could tell, they were very comparable, except for the overall premium price and the deductible. And by our judgment, the $5,000 difference in deductible was worth taking the risk on because that's an amount that we can stomach in the event that something like this happens. Versus that saves us then, between those 2 quotes, about $6,000 a year. So in the end, we decided to go with the lowest bid based on the fact that my relationship with that company was very positive in that month, all of those interactions, as well as the cost savings that we eventually end up with. So that's kind of the big picture summary, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Which one are you recommending?
We're recommending the cowbell MMA policy.
The bottom,
Yep.
okay.
And Richard, you had asked a question last board meeting, or maybe it was 2 board meetings ago too, about what's in a cybersecurity policy, and I kind of looked at you like I don't really know the answer, which was true, I really didn't know the answer. But farther down in this document is a list of all the different things that are covered in this policy and the insured amount. So you can look that over too.
Because I compared to, like, auto insurance, there's some discount, big insurance companies, as compared to somebody that doesn't advertise at all. And the one, you get in an accident, they're not going to pay, they're going to fight it, type of thing. So it just, you have insurance, you pay it, but we're not exclusions. Exclusion, A, B, AA, B, I mean, they keep on going. So that's what I'm saying is that,
So actually, both companies had a few items that they wanted done before actually signing on the dotted line. And one of the reasons we ended up going with that last cowbell is because Brian Clyer actually pointed out that the other policy had more of these contingencies that we needed to kind of hit beforehand. They're not really quite the same thing, but they kind of gave us a feeling of like, well, wait, shouldn't we have sorted this out ahead of time? Rather than you putting this directly in the policy and saying we have to get this done ahead of time. So that was actually one factor that we did consider in the conversation.
So in your opinion, cowbell is a quality insurance company, if I may call it that?
Right. More so, my opinion is that Marsh McLennan, the broker, is a quality institution. I actually had been recommended them, both brokers, I had been recommended by multiple tech directors. And so what we're really getting is a broker to work with us to then go out to cowbell or whoever the next policyholder might be. But the idea is that the broker is our advocate, and that is a message that I received.
Other questions for these two? I apologize. I don't believe I entertained a motion for this. Is that correct? Okay.
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Olson. Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
I almost said something about we need more cowbell, but for all you Saturday Night Live people, right?
I'm disappointed that I didn't think of that.
So we have a motion by Mr. Olson and a second by Ms. Cavalier. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Gentlemen, thank you for your work on that, and please thank Mr. Clyer as well. That brings us to item 11, Policy Committee. It does not appear there's any report. So 11A, consider approval of the following policies. We will take all of these at one time unless anybody wants to policy out and speak to it individually. Otherwise, we will be looking for approval of policy 209, Code of Ethics, policy 415, mandated reporting of maltreatment of vulnerable adults, policy 104, school district mission statement, policy 201, legal status of the school board, policy 202, school board officers, policy 212, school board member development, and policy 420, students and employees with sexually transmitted infections and diseases. So I will entertain a motion to approve all of those that I just read with one motion.
So moved.
We have a motion by Ms. Lechtenberg. Do we have a second? A second? Mr. Robichaud? We have a second by Mr. Robichaud. Any further discussion on these? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. Brings us to item 12, other matters. 12A, consider approval of resolution 23-24, establishing combined polling places for multiple precincts and designating hours during which the polling places will remain open for voting for school district elections not held on the day of a statewide election in 2023. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Ms. Cavalier, a second by Mr. Bellingham. Any further discussion or comments on this? Questions? Okay, hearing none. All those, this is a roll call. Mr. Bellingham, will you please do a roll call?
Thank you. John Bellingham, aye. Courtney Cavalier,
Aye.
Leanne Lechtenberg,
Aye.
Richard Olson,
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud,
Aye.
Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes 6-0.
Okay, thank you for that. That brings us to item 12B, consider approval of 2022 Pay 2023 levy certification. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
We have a motion, by Mr. Olson. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mr. Olson, a second by Ms. Lechtenberg. Do we have any further discussion on this item?
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes.
I would just like to thank Mr. Nelson and Mr. Gertis. That is probably as comprehensive of a report for truth and taxation as I've been through in many years. So thank you for your work on that. It was excellent.
I have to agree. I think I learned new things this morning. And so I really appreciate it, how in-depth that was. That was great.
Mr. Olson?
Could he go through it again?
Chris and I have another hour.
Any other comments?
I will sleep then.
Just echoing what these board members have said, great job. We appreciate it. We hope the public learns something from it. School finance is not simple. It's anything but simple, and we appreciate you trying to bring it down to our level. So thank you very much.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I think Jerry mentioned it when there was a recess that it's detailed. I've never seen anything detailed like this.
Yes.
It's immense.
Yes, and I think that's what Mr. Bellingham just referenced as well, and similar
Yeah.
to what Ms. Cavalier said.
And the color's pretty too.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, we have a motion by Mr. Olson and a second by Ms. Lechtenberg. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. All right, that brings us to item 12C, recognition of school board service, Ms. Courtney Cavalier and Ms. Leanne Lechtenberg. For those of you who don't know, this is their last board meeting with us, and I will open it up. Mr. Benty, I don't know if you want to start, and we'll have allow any board members to comment if they would like.
So I haven't got to work with Courtney as much as a superintendent, but I've enjoyed the time that I've spent with you. I was hoping to get to know you a little bit better, but I wish you well.
Thanks, Jamie.
The times that we spent out at Shattuck talking, I enjoyed. So I wish you well, and good luck in your future.
Thank you.
Leanne and I go way back. Leanne used to come to my office when I was the high school principal, and I was convinced for about a year and a half that she only came to my office for one reason, and that was what, Leanne?
Your chocolate chip cookies.
The chocolate chip cookies that I would bring. So, and what made me think that was one day I didn't have any, and she came up and whispered in my ear, "Where are the cookies?" So I've really enjoyed working with you, both as a building administrator and now in your role as board member and my role as superintendent. So I wish you well. It sounds like you're going to be traveling some, so I hope you get all your enjoyment out of that as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, board members, if you would have any words you want to share, feel free to. Anyone?
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a few comments to both Courtney and to Leanne. That you are dedicated individuals to your commitment, to your service as school board members, as well as individuals who have lived in the community for a number of years. Your voice will definitely be missed on the board on behalf of students, on behalf of what we are all about our mission and our vision. You both have brought tremendous insights into that. And again, I wish you both the greatest of success I know that you're not going to leave Faribault, so we don't have to, except for a while to Africa. And we wish you the best. But stick around. You know, there's always another election coming up. So,
Thank you, Chair.
but thank you very much for your dedication.
Any other comments, board members?
Mr. Chair, I will. So, first of all, I'd like to thank both of you for your public service. And as we know, those of you who have had public service or who ran within election, it's not easy. Sitting on a board, you're easily criticized and kind of like a coach. We're easily criticized and rarely complimented. But Leanne, I'd like to first of all thank you for putting your name into the hat, if you so wish, back in, was that January? December, January, and going through the process of being selected to the board there. We taught a lot of years together. I was trying to think the other day, it was 8 or 9, right next, poor Leanne had to teach next to me for 8 or 9 years down at McKinley. But anyway, our friendship and your dedication, as Dr. Robichaud said, to the students and staff here at Faribault Public Schools and what you've done as a board member and as a community member is greatly appreciated, and I will always consider you a good friend. Courtney, we were elected together 4 years ago when we went through let's just say thick and thin, maybe probably more thick than anything through these years, and the discussions we've had, and I've always admired the professionalism and the rationale that you've brought forward to different topics and thinkings, even though we always didn't agree on everything, we listened and we accepted and we moved on. So thank you for your public service once again and what you've done and et cetera there. So appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Olson, do you have any comments?
Yes, very simple. Thank you for your service. Sometimes it's hard to get the people to serve, or when there's a vacancy, Leanne, stood up and says, "I'll do this." And but again, it's thank you for your service to the community.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Lechtenberg, thank you for throwing your hat in the ring. Let's see, we go back quite a few years. I used to coach her son in basketball. And I don't believe she ever thought I could sit down for this long and be this calm.
It is very impressive.
Anyway, you've done a wonderful job. To both of you, I am absolutely certain that when you have a bullseye, the students are at the center of the bullseye. And everything you do is in the best interest of the students. And so I want to thank you for serving this year. And I just want to wish you absolutely the best in the future endeavors. And I hope somehow, some way, you're able to stay involved with our school district, because you have a lot to bring to the table. So thank you. Ms. Cavalier, 4 years.
Yeah.
Not quite 4 years ago, you made a call to me. And we had some great conversations about our school board in general and whatnot. And I just want to thank you. You're a deep thinker, and really, really appreciate the conversations we've had. Appreciate the 4 years you've served. Appreciate you giving up the time. I know your husband's in the back, but you've got 2 young kids. And if anybody thinks that this isn't a time commitment, they simply don't know what we all do and what our 2 new elected Lindas are in for. This is a time commitment. And so having young families, we greatly appreciate it. And I would encourage you to find a way to stay involved.
Thank you.
You bring a lot to the table as well. We've served on several committees together, and I just really appreciate your leadership and your questioning and wanting to learn and all that stuff. So thank you very much. All right. You have anything you want to say? Okay. Well, thank you. We really appreciate it. So that takes care of item 12C. That brings us to item, unless either of you, you can have comments in our next section here, I guess, so if that's fair enough. Item 13A, other items of information, school board members, and I'll start with Ms. Cavalier or Ms. Lechtenberg, if there's anything either of you would like to share or say.
Well, I would just like the public to know how much time and work these people put in I was kind of shocked. I've only been on the board for a little bit, and the amount of hours that are put in behind the scenes is unbelievable. So I give them a big hand of applause for being willing to do this, because it's at a great personal loss of time, and their knowledge is great, and it takes a long time to gain that knowledge and that foundation to make the good decisions that they make. So I want to thank you for helping me recognize that you guys do way more than what you see on TV at these meetings. So I applaud all of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd definitely like to take a minute to thank all of you for such a great experience. I don't want the last words I say to be all hot on an issue that we're passionate about. So it's been an honor to serve. Community engagement, education, you all know, is deeply important to me. So I'm really grateful I had this opportunity. I definitely want to thank all the teachers and the support staff in the district. It's been such a hard couple years, and the past couple years have been the hardest of my career. So I have a little bit of a sense of how it is for the teachers and the staff here at the district. I really appreciate everything everybody does for this district. I also really want to say thank you to the Faribault staff, particularly at Roosevelt, who supported my sons and family over the years. I mean, you are part of the reason why I chose to run for the school board, and every step of the way we loved being part of the Falcon family. The teachers in this district and the support staff in this district taught my kids to read and write and to do math and to love music and art and sport. They felt part of the community here. They learned to persevere. They learned about growth mindset. They learned how to work with others. They learned so much more here. I'm so grateful. I always will be. I'd also like to thank you guys and district leadership. I've learned so much from watching you. We've been through a lot together, and I have learned so much that I will keep with me, because I still have quite a while to go in my own professional career. And I do hope that I'll be involved somehow in the Faribault community in the future, so what I've learned here with you, I'll take with me. And finally, I really wish you all the best as we move forward. Dr. Moore and Ms. Boudreau, you guys are so committed. You've been here day in and day out for quite some time now. Congratulations on your election to the school board. These are really difficult times, and we don't all agree. I'm really thrilled that the state might come through with increased funding, because that might take some pressure off of us in many ways that can let us kind of dig in deeper to things that we care about, and maybe give this board a respite and this city a respite from the kind of budget cuts we have been doing, even though clearly they're still in our future. And so I'm sure you'll all come together. I think that's really, really important, that you come together and you stay together and you work together to keep the best interests of our students in the district at the heart of what you do every day. So thank you, Chad. Thank you for your leadership. It's been a long couple years. You've been through some really tough times and some really big crowds that I never saw in the first 2 years. We never saw those kinds of crowds in the first 2 years of this. So you did a really great job. And then Jamie, great job coming in. You're coming in at a very hard time too, after having Todd here for so many years, and to still be kind of dealing with the impact of the pandemic and all of the transitions. So really appreciate all you do. So good luck, you guys. I'm going to miss you for sure. And I just can't say how much I appreciate the opportunity. So
Thank you. Board members, other comments, anything here yet? Mr. Olson?
I'd like to report to the school board on this past weekend, the delegate assembly. I already mentioned one where they're going to bring back a resolution that was in the back cupboard of fully fund education. And they're going to bring it, I don't know when the session, January something, but they're going to bring it forward that we get full funding. Some other issues, in fact, I'll give this book to Jamie. Another one is ability to transfer money from long-term facilities maintenance general fund reserve to the reserve account for operating capital. So that was brought forth. Another one was, these are all passed by voice vote. about with parents. Critically important for the education of their children, and they basically to foster more parent involvement. Really critical is if they can give us a mandate to be fully funded. And if there's existing mandates, either fully fund those or get rid of them. Let's see what else. Or more local control of curriculum, budgeting, school calendar structure, and local innovation. So they want to turn back more local control to the local districts. And lastly is preserve and honor our managerial rights of school boards. So that all passed. It was a great session. There's others like those THC, those eatables, about not having them in schools or near schools and stuff like that. So it was a good session, but we'll see. Oh, in addition, I think March 20th is School Board Day at the Capitol. And I was just wondering if Kathy could figure out the details, the exact date, and the procedure for us to go there, whoever wants to go, of school board, superintendent, even the student reps, would be nice. I think they would get credit. Their teachers would give them credit. If we can rent one of those small school buses. So I don't know what the chances are, but again, it'd be nice to go up there. And because Democrats control, and they say fully fund education, this is the chance to do it. I mean, really, they have to come through, because you can't blame anybody else. So, but if they come through with what they're presenting or the resolutions, we won't have to talk about, cuts anymore. It just, that word will be gone. Huge. It just huge. But again, we'll see what happens. But I would encourage that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olson.
Can I just say thank you to Kathy? I forgot to say thank you. You just make us all feel so supported, and I really appreciate it, from onboarding us, and I'm sure Dr. Martin and Ms. Woodrow will feel the same way. Just really appreciate how you take care of us. Even today, checking in to make sure we would know where to park if we needed any help with the crowds. We really appreciate it, so thank you.
Mr. Olson.
Again, with Courtney, she runs the district, not Jamie. That's a joke out there, but again, yeah, she really supports us. I mean, I can't believe it. When I call for information, she's got to me before I hang up the phone. It's really that fast.
Mr. Olson, thank you for attending that. We appreciate it, and thank you for the feedback. And we'll all, as Mr. Gertis said, cross our fingers and toes and everything for that some of these pass. So any other comments, board members? I just want to throw one thing out there, and I know that Ms. Boudreau left, but I just want to throw this out here. With regards to board training and education and whatnot, this kind of relays back to our policy 202 that we approved tonight, and policy 212, which policy 202 is school board officers, and policy 212 is school board member development. I think about 3 years ago or so, I think it was in your first year on the board, we brought in a gentleman by the name of Bruce Miles, and he did a wonderful job of talking high level, what the board does, what we don't do, and all that stuff. And, the unfortunate part of these elections are when new people come on, they're elected in November, and they start right away in January. And right away in January, unfortunately, is if you're a school district that's doing budget reductions, that's your first topic of conversation. And that's your first really hard vote, is typically around budget reductions. And so I just want to, Mr. Benty and myself had a conference call last Friday with Mr. Miles about possibly coming in and leading a board retreat again and just walking through this stuff with all of us. And if you're interested, he's more than interested and willing, for free, to make phone calls to Ms. Cavalier, Ms. Lechtenberg, to our 2 new elected officials, as well as the rest of the board here yet in December. And then we would hopefully have a board retreat sometime in January, before we really get into the big, deep budget discussion later January. So I just wanted to see, I don't have a price yet for an actual in-person, but he would do all of the reach out and background stuff prior at no charge, is what he had told Mr. Benty and myself, and those conversations would probably be about a 15-minute Zoom or phone call with all of you. So I just wanted to see what your thoughts are. I told him I would reach out to him on Tuesday and let him know what we were thinking. But I would strongly recommend it, right? We all know that we all have different perspectives, and we all know that the best thing for us as a district is to somehow try to come to the middle at times. And even if we don't agree, we got to be able to shake hands, smile, walk out the door together, whatever. And so I'm looking for feedback and thoughts on that. Board members, thoughts?
Good idea.
Good idea?
Good idea.
Let's support it.
Ms. Lechtenberg? You're still on our board? Would you think that would be a good idea? Would you think that would be a good idea for our new incoming board
That
members?
sounds like a wonderful idea.
Okay. Mr. Bellingham?
Support.
Yes.
Ms. Cavalier? Okay, so I will work with Mr. Benty and Bruce Miles, and we'll try to get something lined up. And Ms. Moore, you can expect a phone call at some point in the future, and I'll make sure I communicate with you beforehand. So, okay, thank you, everyone. Once again, just thank you to the two of you, and wish you absolutely nothing but the best. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
That concludes item 13A. So on to 13B, superintendent comments. Mr. Benty.
Yes, so every once in a while I get happy little notes or mail in my mailbox. And this week, when I opened up, I received something from the Minnesota School Board Association. It says the Minnesota School Board Association Awards Program includes a category of recognition for those persons who complete 100 or more hours of attendance at MSBA and NSBA sponsored meetings and activities within a 4-year period of time. I am pleased to inform you that Courtney Cavalier has attained the Director's Award for 2022-2023. So.
Thanks, JP.
So that was one part of it. One, I just want to draw attention back to our donations area, where the chamber donated $67,000 to our pathway program. That was money through a grant that the chamber had received. So I just want to draw back the items that you guys received tonight. Yes, first of all, they're under $5, so you're allowed to accept them.
So we get to keep these.
You get to keep these, yes, okay. But also that these were made possible by donations in equipment from our chamber and our local community, so.
The cabinet is all upset they didn't get one.
Yeah. Scott got one, so we're good. All right, as long as Scott got one.
Puts it in his pocket.
With everyone speaking positive about the legislature, I do feel that it is my job to potentially speak from a more conservative view of it. Yes, MSBA has come out and said that they want fully funded schools. MASA will be coming out with their legislative proposal as well here in the next week or so, in which my guess is they will say as well so much towards the formula and so much towards the cross subsidy, and then throw some other items on there that they are looking at as well. One of the things that the board in January will have to decide is if we are going to look to go in an election for either a levy or some type of capital project. If we decide to go next year for a levy or a capital project or referendum, if we're looking to go in May election, we would be able to split the cost with Northfield because we would have to pay for it, but they're going to go for an election they believe in May. If that's the case, we would have to have a lot of our information in by the end of January, beginning of February. If we decided to wait until November to go for a levy, referendum, or capital project, we, at this point, would be on the hook for all of the election costs. The county would run it, but we would be on the hook for all of the cost. I do not have the timeline yet from the county, and I don't have the dollar amounts yet from the county, but it's something to consider, because if you decide May, we're gonna have to have a very, very quick turnaround in January to make that happen, okay? And the last thing is I'm meeting with our local legislators next Friday around funding and mandates and what they will be looking to do in the upcoming legislative session, so. That's all.
That's it? Okay, thank you. So Superintendent Benty, with regards to what you just said, we probably need to have some conversation. Do we not have a work session in January? Yeah. We may want to discuss that on January 3rd at the organizational meeting, to discuss possibly adding one, because without having deeper conversation on what you just said, I don't know how we could possibly make an educated vote by the end of January. So I think we would need to have further conversation.
Work session on January 3rd.
Yeah, well, January 3rd typically gets to be lengthy the way it is with the organizational meeting, and we could have a lot of seats changing. We have no idea what that looks like, right? So we'll discuss it probably at the end of our meeting on January 3rd and see what we want to do. Okay, so that brings us to dates to remember. Item 14 here, dates to remember. The January 3rd, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. is our organizational meeting. January 17th, 2023 at 7:30 a.m. is the finance meeting. January 23rd, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. is our next business meeting. And for all of you that are left in here, just want to wish you absolutely the best and safest of holidays. And if you're traveling somewhere, we hope it's safe. With that, item 15 is our adjournment. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. How about we have our ladies adjourn us?
All right, I move to adjourn this meeting.
And I will second that.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you very much.
That was a good one for the